speaking all for you. Freedom! Keep your ear to the ground. Talking about the freedom. It's the best show in town. Best show in town. Freedom!
So this is the broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation. You can also see the engine evaluation next to each move, and also how long they spend.
What I like is you can make your own moves on the board. You can check the alternatives to what the players did. And even for the moves you make, you get the computer evaluation here.
Fantastic.
I think you get it quicker and better as a premium member, such as yours truly. What I also like, there is a chat function. You can exchange things with people from all over the world. If you want to see something else, let's say you're watching a tournament and you want to see all the games at once, no problem displaying. I have no idea how many games there are, like 128 games at the same time. You can do even more. This is a team competition. You click on multi-board.
That's beautiful.
You can see all the 8 games going on at once.
You can see the games and standings, which I...
What we got? I'll click around. Games and standings here.
Yeah. Analysis, if we click on that tab,
Let's click on it.
You can see that it's a great little graphical illustration. The red line is 0, that is the absolute even mark. And if the white bars go up, the further up they go, the bigger the advantage. And the black bars show a black advantage.
Then there's a database, and here we get the alternatives. And if we click on a move in the database, bam, it gets played on the board.
Fantastic. And then the PGN can even be downloaded.
I like that feature.
Yeah.
Whatever tournament or game you're following, you click it and you open it in the program of your choice.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like to see as well is when we get a video from the playing hall. I like to see them in their seats, nervous, you feel the tension, you feel like you're there, don't you?
Chess is really becoming a spectator's internet sport.
Great that we can see that. I also love to see the fact that we can get in some of our friends to join us during the broadcast. And it's all interactive, that's what we love. And
a lot of overview functions there.
A lot of great functions there, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you take advantage of all of them. Let's get back to the commentary.
Keep tweeting us, hashtag C24Live. We love to hear from you. Ask us anything, mainly about Lawrence life, but if you have other questions, they're also welcome.
Also send us anything you like about Jan. Hashtag C24Live.
Absolutely.
Super discounts on merchandise. Massive sales on courses from Chessable. Chessable and Chess24 bundles, with new deals appearing every day. Visit chess24.com/deals.
Nice little username there in Fisher Firuzia. The third best and 136th best player of all time.
Yeah, let's take some other challenge here. Ocean Storm is a Grandmaster. Let's not exaggerate, guys. We just started. Let's not take Grandmaster. Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name that just seems attractive. D4, Knight f6.
Yeah, stop playing with my rating, guys. That's becoming a bit embarrassing. I mean, what is this stream if not an opportunity for my mods to roast me? Like, there's really no other reason for me to stream apart from that.
Bishop h3. Rook a2 back. Yeah, I'm not going to accept a draw, of course. We're not in a charity business here.
And a queen check comes. Another queen check. Okay, now you are pre-moving. This is very smart, but I can also pre-move a mate in 2. Okay, thank you for the game, and it wasn't rated. I mean, okay, I'm done. Sorry, guys. I'm not going to banter anymore. This wasn't rated. This was freaking unrated. No, I mean, okay. Most chickenish way to play. I mean, unrated. I'm amazed. I'm just amazed. Okay, if anyone can replace me in this banter, sorry. Okay, let's play against Julia Brazil. It's 3+2, but this will be my your revenge, so I'll make this game last forever.
Ay. Such a beast. Yeah, okay, this is pointless. Okay. Good game. What were we saying? There. Okay.
Let's briefly see if Frenchman has challenged me. It's hard to find. Probably should go to his account and see. Ooh, h6, h3. Hello, g5. Didn't see it coming, eh? Mate? Who's funny now, eh, Harigiri? Oh, knight h2, like this. Knight h2. Please don't hit me. Oh, don't hit me. Boom.
You don't accept my challenge.
Ah, okay, I will accept. I didn't see a challenge.
You're too afraid.
I'm not afraid. I didn't see your challenge. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you go, please? I'm shy.
I'm
can you
gonna
please
sit next to you.
No, can you
while
please
you're
go?
playing.
No, please. Can you go somewhere else?
Okay, no Frenchman. Next is me.
Yeah. Okay.
And you challenge.
Okay. No Frenchman. Being tossed around here by my wife.
Hello, Miss Tactics. Hello there. So, Pico, we gotta play before my manager is back in the office. Ooh. That's, I think your manager should understand and challenge me as well.
I've also been told many a time, Jan, just fix the shit. Stop asking the audience if they can hear or see you. And also, stop cursing. I believe that type of feedback has been given to me. More than once, probably like thrice.
Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name. That just seems attractive.
Play live online against the world's top chess players while they stream their thoughts live. As a Chess24 Premium member, seize the chance to have your moment of fame. Get a peek inside their lives with question and answer sessions, in-depth teaching, analysis and interviews. The Champions Chess Tour, with countless accompanying events, is happening now. Tune in on Chess24.
And queen takes f3. Oh! What is going on? Oh, this is going to be a fortress. I just don't see any hopes at all. This is very easy. Just rook back and forth.
Taking chess to the next level.
Wow. Wow.
Wow, yeah. Nothing else to say. Wow.
Creating the future of the sport. Introducing the Champions Chess Tour. 10 months, 10 tournaments. The world's best players online and on TV.
Freedom! So fresh, so new. Freedom! It's all for you. All for you. Freedom! Keep your ear to the ground. Talking about the freedom. It's the best show in town. Best show in town. Freedom. You. All for you. Freedom! Keep your ear to the ground. Talking about the freedom. It's the best show in town. Best show in town. Freedom!
Super discounts on merchandise. Massive sales on courses from Chessable. Chessable and Chess24 bundles, with new deals appearing every day. Visit chess24.com/deals.
Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name. That just seems attractive.
Play live online against the world's top chess players while they stream their thoughts live. As a Chess24 Premium member, seize the chance to have your moment of fame. Get a peek inside their lives with question and answer sessions, in-depth teaching, analysis and interviews. The Champions Chess Tour, with countless accompanying events, is happening now. Tune in on Chess24.
So this is the broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation, You can also see the engine evaluation next to each move, and also how long they spend.
What I like is you can make your own moves on the board. You can check the alternatives to what the players did. And even for the moves you make, you get the computer evaluation here.
Fantastic.
I think you get it quicker and better as a premium member, such as yours truly. What I also like, there is a chat function. You can exchange things with people from all over the world. If you want to see something else, let's say you're watching a tournament and you want to see all the games at once, no problem displaying. I have no idea how many games there are, like 128 games at the same time. Can do even more. This is a team competition. You click on multi-board.
That's beautiful.
You can see all the 8 games going on at once.
You can see the games and standings, which I...
What we got? I'll click around. Games and standings here.
Yeah. Analysis, if we click on that tab, that's
Let's click on it.
You can see that it's a great little graphical illustration. The red line is 0, that is the absolute even mark. And if the white bars go up, the further up they go, the bigger the advantage. And the black bars show a black advantage.
Then there is a database, and here we get the alternatives. And if we click on a move in the database, bam, it gets played on the board.
Fantastic. And then the PGN can even be downloaded.
I like that feature.
Yeah.
Whatever tournament or game you're following, you click it and you open it in the program of your choice.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like to see as well is when we get a video from the playing hall. I like to see them in their seats, nervous, you feel the tension, you feel like you're there, don't you?
Chess is really becoming a spectator's internet sport.
Great that we can see that. I also love to see the fact that we can get in some of our friends to join us during the broadcast. And it's all interactive, that's what we love. And
a lot of overview functions there.
A lot of great functions there, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you take advantage of all of them. Let's get back to the commentary.
Keep tweeting us, hashtag C24Live. We love to hear from you. Ask us anything, mainly about Lawrence life, but if you have other questions, they're also welcome.
Also send us anything you like about Jan. Hashtag C24Live.
Absolutely.
Hello and a big welcome to all of you joining us here at Chess24. We are about to kickstart the finals at the Opera Euro Rapid. Now it's been 7 days of absolutely insane chess actions. We've seen brilliancies, we've seen blunders, we've seen emotions, drama, excitement, just everything that we could have asked for has kept us on the edge of our seats. And what we have set ourselves up for is an absolute dream final as the world champion Magnus Carlsen takes on arguably the player who is most in form. Absolutely impressive so far, Wesley So. Before we talk about the finals, let's do a quick roundup of what we saw on day 2 of the quarterfinals, because I'm still reeling from all that we witnessed. Now, the Wesley So Radjabov match on day 2, Wesley had everything in control. It took him 3 games to round that up and make his way into the finals. The first 2 games ended in a draw. The third game won by Wesley in a brilliant manner. And with that, Wesley went on to take the finals, where he will be facing Magnus. Now, the Magnus-Maxime match was a completely different story. While on day 1, on their set 1, Magnus took only 3 games to wrap up his match against Maxime. Day 2 was the day of comebacks for Maxime. He did win the rapid portion of it, winning 2 games back-to-back in game 3, game 4. When the day started with 2 draws, it looked like Magnus was on his way without really needing any playoffs. But then 2 big blunders in game 3 and game 4 saw Maxime give the world champion no chances and taking it to the playoffs. What drama followed in the playoffs as well. While Magnus took game 1, it was Maxime trailing him, again needing to win on demand, and that's exactly what he did. A brilliantly played game by Maxime. The second blitz game saw the match tie again and took us all to the absolutely incredible but controversial format, the Armageddon. In the Armageddon, we saw Magnus just absolutely crush Maxime. That move, Queen H6, is one for the history books. Not going to be forgotten anytime soon. And clutching the Armageddon in style, Magnus Carlsen went on to win his match finally against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And all the excitement was summed up in Magnus's emotions right after. Take a look at this video. And here we see at the very, very end, Magnus, relief, applause, just everything, finally smiling after a very difficult day. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave disappointed, but really he really put up an incredible gladiator-like fight, I think, against the world champion to come back twice on the same day in the rapid portion as well as the blitz portion. Not something that many can do. We saw Magnus extremely at times frustrated, furious, sometimes smiling during the match. But that bit at the end really just sums up all the drama and the up and down that happened during that epic semi-finals. Now, what we've set ourselves up for is Magnus Carlsen taking on Wesley So in a 2-set match. Each match will feature 4 rapid games, the same format that we've been seeing in the knockout portion of the event so far. Each match will consist of 4 rapid games played with the time control of 15 minutes with a 10-second increment. And on day 2, on the final day of the finals, if the match is a tie, we will see the players go on to play the playoffs with 2 blitz games, followed by an Armageddon if required. Now, this matchup is exactly what we saw in the Skilling Open final, where it was Wesley So who won that final and won the Skilling Open eventually. Now, so far in the tournament, Magnus to some degree has avenged his losses against Daniel Dubov in the quarterfinals, something that he was on the back end of during the Athens Masters. And this has been Magnus's road to the finals. I think these 2 players have been clearly the best performers so far in the event. Take a look at this. In the preliminaries, Magnus Carlsen cruised to first place. I think it was at this moment that all of us felt Magnus is out of the funk. 9.5 points in the preliminaries, 6 wins, 7 draws, and just 2 losses. In the quarterfinals, suddenly, Magnus looked extremely shaky. Day 1, he won in just 3 games. But what happened in the final day of the quarterfinals, the world champion himself was very disgusted with his play. But despite that, he beat Daniel Dubov in the tie breaks and went on for the semifinals, in which he beat Maxime. Let's take a look at Wesley's road to the final. Equally impressive, if not more. In the preliminaries, Wesley finished behind Magnus and Anish with 9 points, just half a point behind the world champion, with 5 wins, 8 draws, and 2 losses. Equal number of losses in the preliminaries as Magnus Carlsen in the quarterfinals. And I think this is the stage where we felt a little difference in the form of these 2 players. While Magnus in the quarterfinals seemed to struggle a lot against Dubov, especially on day 2, it was a Wesley So show in his quarterfinals against Jan-Krzysztof Duda. Absolutely crushing performance in that quarter saw Wesley go on to play the semis, and against Temur Radjabov, considered one of the most solid players, very, very difficult to beat. I have to say, Wesley made it look easy. Raja himself said later on he wasn't very happy with his play, but I think also it's been a very, very long event for all players, and that's understandable. But despite that, I have to say that Wesley was just super impressive in the way he has cruised to the finals, which actually makes you feel that there are no favorites going into this, and that's exactly how we like it. Now, while these have been all the stats in the tournament so far, Mr. Dodgy had an interesting stat for us. Let's bring that up. And Mr. Dodgy said, I provide the facts, you predict the winner, and this is what he had for us. We cannot miss these kind of things. They're extremely important, and this is what it has. Wesley So blunders once per year. Magnus Carlsen has been blundering once per half game. Of course, this is a joke, but is it really, Mr. Dodgy? Now, he's supported by multiple cats, excellent air quality as confirmed by the AirThings device behind Wesley So. Magnus Carlsen, poor humidity apparently. Well, Yes, I think the fun and game is just on Twitter, because this final is going to be anything but funny for anyone. I think both these players have so much at stake. Magnus has been speaking about redemption from the way he's been performing in the last few events, while Wesley So is looking to make history by beating the world champion twice in the finals. I also see we are being joined by Grandmaster and our expert analyst, Peter Leko. So let's bring him on and get his take on all the action that we're about to witness. Peter, welcome.
Yeah, hello Tanya, hello everybody. It's very nice to be here in the finals. It's a very, very big match between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. I feel like, we are hearing Wesley's interviews, and he's always so humble, and he always says that he feels himself like an underdog, and it works for him perfectly. I mean, when we look at his games, we certainly don't have the feeling that he's underdog against anyone, because he has impressed us truly. However, maybe exactly that's the mindset he needs. And one thing that I feel, that whenever Wesley is up on the scoreboard, like we have seen him win in a very difficult manner against Duda on the first day. He had a very tough match on day one against Radjabov, but actually when he does succeed winning the first set, then basically is unstoppable in the second. And Magnus has to make sure that he takes things under his command right from the start, because if you give him Wesley this comfort, yet he suddenly feels that he has a chance beating Magnus Carlsen, then it's going to be very tough for Magnus as well to stop Wesley.
Peter, I have to say that match against Duda, especially on day one, what we witnessed was really exciting, but I felt Wesley was the one who was driving throughout. Even the game that he lost, when it was Duda who pulled blood in the first game, I remember Wesley was the one with the black pieces trying. He blundered in that last moment, lost the first game, but after that, winning those two games back to back at the very end in the way he did, I have always felt that Wesley has been in control. But a very key insight from you there, that once he's taken the lead, he knows exactly what he needs to do to take the match on set 2. Let's also quickly take a look at what our audience had to say about the upcoming matches. Let's get the audience poll up. And we see, and this is a big shocker for me, Magnus Carlsen at 73% and Wesley So at 27%. And of course, we're also going to be having a fight for the third place. For that, again, a surprise here, Peter, 60% to Raja and 40% to MVL. I really think that, ladies and gentlemen, you are completely underestimating Wesley So here. I would put that match as a clear 50-50. Yes, Magnus is a favorite. Many times when he plays, this is something Wesley has said himself, but this is not one of those. I think Wesley is just on his A game. Magnus himself has mentioned that it's going to be a very difficult match. Anything can happen. Peter, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I think that Wesley actually agrees. I mean, he just doesn't care to be an underdog. I mean, he just enjoys this role. I think he wants to give the answer on the chessboard, and I perfectly understand what you are meaning, that I also have the feeling like this is a 50-50 match. Yeah, one can argue that if Magnus plays as Magnus Carlsen at his best, then probably he's a favorite. However, I mean, so far in this event, Wesley has been so stable, and the big question is, your opponent can always play as strong as his opponent lets him to perform. And in this regard, the big question is, Magnus, we see again taking the white pieces. So I think Magnus will be very, very aggressive in the very first game to try to set the tone, to see that, to try to put Wesley's openings under some pressure in order to also force Wesley to take more risk from the white side. So there is a lot of psychology involved in the very, very early games. We're going to see if Wesley manages to stop Magnus, then, Magnus's initiative in the first game, then I think Wesley feel quite comfortable for the whole day.
And there we see the players fighting for the third place, which means a bigger purse as well as tour points, which are extremely important in their road to the finals. Timur Radjabov has actually already booked his spot in the grand final in September, the finals of the Meltwater chess tour. Radjabov is our first finalist for that after he won the Air Things Masters. And Peter, we've got an opening that promises a lot of action in the middle game.
Yeah, it's a typical, it's a Kalashnikov. A typical structure with white playing the line c4. So basically Maxim is trying to play the classical way from the white side. This is how you were supposed to be treating the Kalashnikov like 20 years ago. Then there had been some new development, like after knight b5, d6, many people started playing knight 1 c3 and then a6, knight a3. And we saw some differences compared to the usual Sveshnikovs, but the c4 move is the traditional one. I mean, that's old school. And now the big question is that, does black play for some f5 plan? I mean, there was a time when black started to play for f5 or the more traditional of trying to get bishop g5 in. Then basically black would start with bishop e6. However, our main focus definitely gonna be the Magnus Carlsen Wesley So game, and has also started. Magnus opts for d4 and goes for the Nimzo.
No QGD. It's gonna be a Nimzo Indian.
Exactly. I mean, it's Nimzo and with knight f3. I mean, basically Magnus invites Wesley to go for this short castle line, which I'm, also one of the big advocates of the line short castle. However, that leads to some ultra sharp play and Wesley goes for it. And Magnus is the one sidestepping. All right, so Magnus is not going for these ultra sharp lines with bishop g5, but he goes now with queen b3 and black plays c5. I mean, that's the traditional way, d takes c5. Now, usually black plays knight a6. I mean, this is like a typical way of playing this variation with knight a6. And then usually white, well, it's in fact not really clear what is usually, because there haven't really been many games lately. I mean, I remember that this position was kind of debated in 2005, more or less, with slightly different move orders. But I mean, I haven't really seen any recent games in this variation.
And I think a knight a6 played, the main idea is that you don't want to take the c5 pawn with the bishop, because it's much nicer to be able to get your knight into c5 and then head to e4 with that knight. Just to demonstrate that, very often we see moves like knight a6, a3, when again after a3 black doesn't capture. He can go bishop c5, but that's not the point of playing knight a6. You capture on c3 here, and if white takes with the queen, not going to spoil that pawn structure. You take knight a c5, and a move like bishop g5 can actually be met with knight to e4. So that's the whole idea of trying to grab the c5 pawn with the knight.
Exactly. I mean, this is the whole point. And the big question is, I mean, what does white really have in mind? Because we do have those queen c2 lines. For example, in the queen c2 Nimzo, that's very, very similar to this position. Just very quickly, since Magnus is taking his time to show this, that after queen c2 castles, knight f3, c5, d takes c5, knight a6. This used to be a very big main line. And there were some moments when Morozevich came up with this very interesting move c6. And it was kind of spicing things up for quite some time. Then black has found the antidote. And later, white exclusively switched to g3. And the main line, knight takes c5, bishop g2, knight c4, short castle. And here there were different debates by capturing the knight with the knight or with the bishop. I mean, both leading to double H positions. However, with the white queen now committed to b3, it's slightly different, because, for example, after knight a6, one could argue that, okay, black is now not threatening to capture with the knight, so maybe he can do something else. The big question is, what is Magnus thinking about? I mean, if you go for queen b3, I mean, you definitely have to expect c5, d5, knight a6 to happen, because that's the most logical way from black side.
I think here as well, Peter, a3 is not the kind of move you want to make, and g3 ideas, like you pointed out, he goes for the move bishop to d2. That's an interesting choice, which makes you think that perhaps after bishop c3, what he really wants to do is capture the bishop with his own bishop. But let's just see what happens in those kind of lines. If Magnus was to take bishop takes c3, because he can't take on c5 before that trade as the bishop hangs. So bishop c3 can be met by bishop c3, and then knight c5, you fall back to queen c2. There's still knight e4, but then maybe there are these unnatural but slightly annoying moves like bishop b4.
Yeah, I think that it's very justified what Wesley is doing, that he recaptured with the bishop on c5, because, you know, when white plays the move bishop d2, it's clear that he wants to save the tempo on a3, and certainly if white gets his bishop to the long diagonal immediately, capturing with the bishop, then he solves all his problems with the bishop on c1. I mean, it's automatically developed. So Wesley meant, like, you know, I don't want to go along this agenda, but We also see that after bishop takes c5, which is a very natural move, yes, the knight is kind of stuck on a6, but white has also committed the move bishop d2. That's kind of the justification why black feels that now he can recapture with the bishop on c5. However, we do see that the engine bar says that now white has some chances to fight for an advantage. So in this regard, we might be seeing a very important theoretical duel here after all.
And also to mention that actually after bishop d2, the reason that black wants to capture on c5 is because there is no good waiting move anymore for black in this position. You don't really know where you want to put the queen. You can't go b6, bishop b7 as long as the pawn hangs. You don't want to trade on the knight. So bishop c5 is the way to respond here. I think, Peter, after bishop c5, a move like rook d1 or e3 can come into mind. But I do like rook d1 a little more, keeping the options of maybe going with this d2 bishop to f4 or g5. And then black can perhaps develop with b6, bishop b7. I do feel that these are the ways that we can expect this middle game to go forward.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's very logical for white to try to get his bishop to g5, posing some headache for black with the pin, then also be ready for e3. The move rook d1, as you mentioned, very nice because it eyes black's break with d7, d5. However, I also believe that, if already we are looking from the black side, one of the most logical ways of reacting to bishop g5 is getting the bishop back to e7, solving the problem of the pin, getting ready for some b6, bishop b7, and let's not forget that knight c5 will always come with a tempo. And if white will have to, let's just quickly make some moves just to illustrate that what happens if white plays natural moves. Okay, bishop g5, bishop e7, rook d1, let me play b6. White plays e3, black plays bishop b7, white plays bishop e2, fairly standard. Then black gonna play knight c5, and I think this is exactly the position that a black player has in front of his eyes. Playing knight c4, solving all the problems because white is still short of castling. And for example, after knight takes e4, something like bishop e4 with a tempo followed by d5 looks perfectly fine for black. And in this regard, yeah, Magnus does go bishop g5, and I'm expecting the move bishop e7. It feels to me that white has to be super energetic. The question is, what does it mean to be super energetic in this position? Do you somehow try to play rook d1 first, not to play e3, in order to try to be more flexible of going e4? Because that would be kind of very important. Black plays something like b6, the same. Then white goes e4, and we see that he's just in time, because now after knight c5, queen c2, the pawn on e4 is not hanging. Again, some questions like bishop b7, e5, then will black have the move knight e4, where does it lead? I mean, a lot of things to think about for the players. Very interesting, and I don't even know if this is any theory or not.
The amount of time that the two players are taking right now, they have slowed down already. Magnus down to 11.5 minutes. Wesley's taken a couple of minutes. You get the feeling that they do know what they're doing, but not precisely. It doesn't feel like the exact move order prep. They're, of course, very familiar with all the plans and ideas. But I think with Magnus taking about 4 minutes, Wesley taking about 2 to 3 minutes, one gets the feeling that they are still trying to navigate the precision required in this opening. Peter, we might not get too many chances to look at our other game, but right now, while this is still developing, let's take a quick look because the position does look very, very fascinating. I see that white has sacrificed a pawn. And I have to say that my first feeling is that black seems to be doing really well with the two bishops, an extra pawn. What do you think about this position?
Yeah, well, it's a very, very double-edged position. One of the points is that this move, queen d2, that Maxim played, I mean, basically it falls into this trap. Now the big question is that did Maxim, anticipate and he is setting a counter trap, or did he just by playing too quickly as usual, he actually accidentally ran into this? Because bishop e2, bishop e6 castles, no, first bishop e3, okay, it doesn't matter, rook c8, queen d2, runs into knight a5. And I do remember that I had this because I was playing this from the white side, and I think that against Igor Natov, one of the players who had been actually the second of Radjabov in the early years, was also a big Kalashnikov expert, and we did play this in the Olympiad. And I think that then I was making sure that this knight a5 trick will not come, because the knight a5 trick is that now with the rook on c8, black eyes the c4 pawn, so white has no other way than to play b3. And all of a sudden, black can play b5 because white cannot capture on b5 with cb5 because queen c7 attacks both knights on the c file. So that's kind of the justification. And after b5, you basically have to say that, all right, okay, so you're going to win the pawn. However, I'm getting a very nice structure with b4. Knight c6, a, first rook fd1. They are making sure that black is not breaking out with d5. Now Radjabov goes for knight g4, very important move again, because if white would actually end up getting this type of position that he gets f3 and gets a4 in, and black is stuck with this knight on f6, he might have some problems because he is not having this f5 counterplay and so on. So it's very, very important for Teimur to trade this knight for the bishop. Yes, he does lose the tempo, he goes back to e6, but now after a4, he has the move f5. This is the typical way of breaking white structure. White played with rook a b1, saying that, okay, you have played f5, but actually fe4 will be always met by fe4, and please show me where is your attack. But I also understand your point that, okay, black is a pawn up. Yes, white does have some compensation, but what's the big deal?
Can there be a big deal after trying to push this b5 pawn, especially now that rook b1 is in? We can see that this pawn can be advanced quite a bit. b5 is the first move that comes to my mind as a forcing move, asking black, where is your knight heading? Knight a5, knight b3 seems to be the road, but white can get a strong foot with his pawn on b6.
Yeah, let's just quickly take a look. For example, the logical trade. I'm going to play knight a5. And the reason why I'm not that afraid of this b6 pawn is that after, for example, pushing b6, I'm stepping in with my knight to b3, and I close down the b file for white's rook. And with the,
Peter, sorry, go on.
Yes, and with the closed file, I feel that I will be able to control this b6 pawn rather comfortably.
Also, you make sure that the rook on b1 can't even switch back to a1 because that knight b3 controls that as well. So maybe not b6. The other move that does come to mind after b5 is knight b4, trying to jump in with this knight to d5, trying to jump in with this knight to c6 if you go knight b3. This might be better than b6.
Yeah, I mean, definitely you need this c6 square. I mean, this is a typical Kalashnikov-Sveshnikov type of position that, you know, black has given up many squares, but he also gets a lot of squares in return. For example, after knight b3, if you have to move with your queen away, like queen e2, I might be getting bishop g5 in, trading the dark square bishops, then my knight might be able to jump back to d4. Yes, we do understand white will have knight c6, but it's just a very, very messy, complicated position. Needs really precise calculation. However, I mean, opening-wise, I would say that Black should be kind of satisfied because, okay, yes, white has compensation, but it's maximum unclear.
All right, a very complex middle game. Peter, we'll keep an eye out on this. Now, of course, top points are very, very important, but we do know that Raja has made it to the finals. For Maxime, it's a lot more at stake because he still needs those top points or to win one of the majors to book his spot into the finals, as well as the difference in the prize money. We'll see how it develops. But meanwhile, a lot of trades the queens have been traded off. And what do we feel about this position?
Yeah, well, let's just very quickly go back. So after bishop g5, actually Wesley played the move b6, which is very, very interesting. I mean, it's quite an ambitious move, trying to be as flexible as possible. I mean, also probably discouraging white of going for e4 because then black did not lose a tempo on returning. So maybe after something like e4, h6 would be the critical move, you know, targeting the bishop immediately. And it feels like even something like bishop h4, g5, bishop g3 followed by some d5 might work because white's king is still stuck in the center. So definitely at least Wesley signaled that he's ready to open up the position as quickly as possible. Maybe it's not even required, maybe just bishop b7, e5, knight h5 is another idea when you eliminate the bishop and you feel like black is very active. So Magnus said, okay, I have to slow down. He plays e3, bishop b7. And after bishop e2, we see a very, very fascinating move by Wesley. So he goes bishop b4. It looked like the bishop has just captured back the pawn on c5. And what is black doing? Is he losing tempos? No. It's a very, very interesting judgment because he wants to make sure that white is not able to castle. Because if white castles, black would have used exactly the same motive like in the game. But actually much more powerful because now after bishop takes d8, knight takes c3, white would be forced to ruin his pawn structure because the bishop on e2 is hanging. And that's why Magnus actually opted for a3. Looks like he's losing the tempo, but no. He makes sure that after takes knight e4, which was clearly Black's idea. He's able to trade down everything. And after knight takes c3, he's not forced to take back the knight, but since his bishop is protected with his king, he can play the move bishop e7. Rook e8, bishop d6. We do see that, Black is kind of stabilizing the position, looks perfectly fine, but there is this incredible nice bishop on d6, stopping Black from playing d5. And with this stuck pawn on d7, one does have the feeling that, rook hd1, rook ac1, all kinds of moves are possible, which are very much in Magnus's style.
Peter, we're getting an update from Sotris. Let's just see what this is about. Apparently, Wesley did have a little bit of an opportunity on move 11 to turn things in his favor. If we just go back to the moment where Magnus played a3, Wesley could have gone knight c5, I believe. And
wow.
Oh, this is stunning. The queen gets trapped.
This is incredible. This is just brilliant. This knight c5 would have been an incredible shocker for Magnus. I don't know, how to react, because you kind of are forced to go queen c2 and you get nothing immediately. Let's just show you. Queen takes b4, runs into a5, targeting the queen. There is no other square than b5 when Black will have the choice of tapping the queen with bishop c6 or also with bishop a6. Really incredible. And in fact, after knight c5, if white has to retreat to c2, then after bishop takes c3, queen takes c3, knight c4, gives Black very, very comfortable equality. What a miss by Wesley and also by Magnus.
Basically.
One
second, Peter. One second. What about bishop e4? Do you not just end up losing big material because there's knight b3 coming if you go queen d2 or queen c1?
Oh wow! It's even getting worse. Yeah, bishop e4.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this is incredible because then white is almost collapsing. If you allow bishop takes c3 and you will have to capture with the pawn, so you put your queen back to d1. That's strategically a very big catastrophe. It's like a minus plus position, clear advantage for Black. So what? Knight c5 would have strategically almost won the game. Incredible.
Unbelievable. And I did see Wesley shake his head a little bit. It makes me wonder if he realized what a big miss, because this was more than a golden opportunity. With the Black pieces, Wesley in 11 moves could have had a huge advantage, possibly won the game.
Yeah, well, it's basically even, it looks like, queen c2 is not a mistake, because if I play queen d1, then after takes, knight c4, it will be even worse for me. So at least with queen c2, I'm luring the bishop to e4 so that you will not have knight e4, which is a luxury for Black. Black doesn't need it. He only needs it to basically claim strategical winning position. To say that Black is just perfectly fine and clearly better, it's already absolutely clear. Wow, it would have been some incredible cold shower for Magnus. Starting the game with the white pieces, seemingly you have a very solid safe position, and then you get such a shocker. It would have been very, very tough for him to react to that. But like this, what he got, basically got his dream. I think this is kind of, we have seen Magnus also that in all these technical positions, he was just so brilliant against Maxim, also against Daniil Dubov. So this is, Magnus is just very happy. Maybe Black is actually not having real problems, because the big question is, however, what do you do with this bishop on d6? Because if you just take it, then you might end up in some unpleasant position. The rook on d6, white will try to cement the structure with b3, get ready for some knight e5 squeeze, double the rooks. So basically, I feel like Black, he opted for f6, making sure that he controls knight e5, and he wants to make sure that the bishop on d6 will not feel so comfortable, because whenever you move from d6, Black will go d5 immediately. And otherwise, he has also some ideas like king f7, maybe e5, king e6, or different ways of fighting against the bishop on d6. Yeah, Magnus goes b3, no need to rush.
And I think looking at the way the game has unfolded, you can truly see the power of that move that we were looking at, the big missed opportunity by Wesley, that how quickly the Black knight from a6 could have come to e4 with so many tempos, and also cemented the c5 outpost with the kind of trade that you need on c3. Peter, I'm still thinking about that because that would have been a big moment in this match. And I think in situations like these, it's much better if Wesley did not realize what he's missed.
Definitely. I mean, if he's not realizing, then kind of he might be feeling happy that, okay, after all, yeah, I'm playing the first game with the black pieces against Magnus, so it's kind of normal that I might be under some slight pressure. But if I know how do I deal with it and I have a clear plan of neutralizing white's slight initiative, then I should be happy. But I mean, if suddenly after taking on c3 he realized that he did have the move knight c5, I mean, getting it out of your head, that's a very difficult task because you understand that you missed some incredible golden opportunity there.
And for some reason, Magnus smiling right now and looking pleased. I wonder if he realizes that he's just survived a big scare and what potentially could have been a terrible start for him. Not really sure what's going on, but Magnus feeling slightly pleased with the way things have turned out. Peter, I think so far after b3, I still have to say that if we just disregard that miss on move 11, Black has reasons to be pleased with the way things have turned out in the opening. Just no problems at all. The bishop on d6 can always be traded, but you don't need to rush with it. I just don't see anything that can be wrong with Black's position here. I think this has gone well for Black, actually, besides that 11 move miss.
Yes, but you know, somehow it's the typical situation that this bishop on d6 is really irritating Black. I mean, on one hand, you don't want to take, and definitely it's also one of White's big problems that because of this bishop on d6, which is so nice, he cannot really move his knight. Neither knight d4, neither knight d2 are possible because the bishop was hanging on d6. However, now after moving back the bishop to a3, the big question is what does White have after the move d5? Because it seems like a very timely break. Just go d5 and okay, what does Magnus really try to get? Yeah, d5 is on the board and Magnus goes knight d4. So he wants to use the b5 square for his knight. Wesley's h5 move basically created this weakness. On the other hand, Wesley probably felt like I want to stop any kind of a5 ideas in long terms. I don't really get why Wesley hurried with this a5 move, but okay, definitely felt like, okay, it's probably a good move.
Once that knight comes to b5, then it also starts eyeing threats like f3 and knight d6 could be a big jump. So Wesley decides to first create knight b5, knight d6 after f3 could be very annoying. So Wesley first decides to create a weakness in Magnus's pawn structure, trades on c4. And now the question is, does he allow knight b5 or not? b6 is a weak pawn. Peter, I think, should Black instead stop this idea of knight b5 with maybe bishop to a6 and trade this bishop for the knight? Or do you think that trade is not desirable for Black?
Well, it's a very principled question. The big question, where does it lead? Yeah, after bishop a6, basically seems like White is forced to play knight b5. So you capture bishop takes b5. Now White is not able to capture cb because of knight c3 check. So White will we can see that this pawn on b6 might still be very vulnerable because White wants to go f3, kicking the knight away, and once the knight goes back to c5, which looks like a very nice square, then White goes rook d6 and threatens the pawn on b6. So despite seemingly being quite solid from the Black side, it might run into some really unpleasant problems. And Wesley has decided to go knight c5, targeting the a4 pawn, and basically trying to force Magnus to capture on c5. I don't really believe that Magnus wants to do that. Does he have a move like knight b5? Yeah, knight b5 is played.
It's not just the a4 pawn, but the g2 pawn as well, which is under attack. Does Wesley plan to actually sacrifice an exchange here? Because knight d6 looks like a move that's coming regardless of whether you move one of the rooks or not. Can Black make a move like knight a4, knight d6, bishop g2 here?
No, I don't think so. I mean, feeling-wise, you know that I was a big advocate of sacrificing the exchange. But I mean, look at this. After bishop g2, for example, I even not necessarily have to take immediately, but just to illustrate that after takes, White will play a move like f3, and all of a sudden, Black's bishop is completely out of the game. White has the open files. The knight on a4 is also not feeling so happy. I mean, this is definitely not what Black wants, but I'm also having the feeling, you know, that after rook e d8, if you give white now all this time, and at some point he might be eliminating this knight. Okay, the position is very dynamic, all this knight d6. I tend to have the feeling that there should be something for white in this position because it's very important tempest here.
All right, there are two direct moves that come to mind. You obviously don't want to trade on d8 and give black access to this d file. So bishop c5 or to start with knight d6. Can we look at some lines which happen after knight d6 because that hits the rook on c8 as well as the b7 bishop. So the rook on c8 also needs to control the 8th rank, I feel. So where would you move it? Would you move it to c7? Then can black go knight b7, knight b7, or start with bishop c5? What happens if you start with bishop c5 here?
Yeah, you take bishop c5. Okay, I have to take bc5.
Knight b7, rook d1, rook d1, rook b7, and you're fine because your king has a lift and your rook is coming to b4. So this should be fine for black.
Yeah, should be. Yeah, Magnus starts with bishop takes c5. B takes c5, I mean, basically can still transpose with knight d6. But I also have the feeling that, you know, white can actually even give up the d file. But of course, it's not even necessary. I mean, white can just play something like f3 and then try to use the b file. The knight is much more mobile than the bishop because actually, just to illustrate, now forget about rook takes d8. I just want to illustrate one thing. That, for example, after f3, black plays just a natural move like king f7. White has ideas like playing rook b1. Black plays bishop c6 and white suddenly retreats with his knight to c3. We see that black doesn't have any anti-squares along the d file. The bishop is kind of dominated by these pawns, white's pawn structure, and white will have the b file to enter with the rook and after jump back with the knight to b5. I mean, this might be very, very unpleasant. Yeah, Magnus starts with f3. I mean, basically makes there are no reasons to capture immediately, but I do see this takes rook b1 followed by knight c3 and invading with the rook along the b file as a very critical test of black's position.
I really like that. I really like the concept that you've just explained, especially trying to play with this good knight versus bad bishop. The pawns on a5, c5 can be extremely difficult for black to defend. At some point, f3 completely kills that bishop's diagonal. Wesley trying to get the king into the center as quickly as he can so that bringing additional forces into defending all these different weaknesses on the board. Peter, you know, when I was, while you were talking, I was observing the players. I have a very strong feeling that Wesley actually realizes what he's missed in the opening. Sometimes I've seen him shake his head, smile a little bit, and I think he does know that that was a big opportunity that was missed by him. And currently, it looks like he is going to need to show some good technique to keep things together.
Yeah, but you know, I'm even not even sure that it's already in black's hands. Maybe that's the reason why he's very unhappy. He also realized that the position is very, very dangerous because if I can capture on d8 and play the move rook b1, and the point is that even if you go bishop a6, I have knight a3. I mean, if you play bishop a6, I remove the knight, protect the pawn, and you cannot stop me from getting into b6. If you play rook d6, I don't care. I'm just gonna give you a check. You go king e7, I'm going to jump back with my knight to b5. And you can never go for the rook endgame because I can win a pawn. Also, maybe I can capture with any of my pawns and it's also very, very bad. I mean, it might be just lost. I mean, this is a typical position that if it's perfectly fine for black, it's just nothing. But if things get out of control and white is the one who is able to enter, then it might be just practically lost. I mean, right now, to be honest, I don't see a defense for black. I mean, rook b1...
I'm going to try from black here because Car is not giving us that big an advantage, which gives me a little bit of hope. He's gone for e4 and not this idea. And I'm wondering after rook b1, bishop a6, knight a3, does black have time to go king e7 so that rook b6 can be met by rook d6 and then rook b8 could have been met by rook d8?
Hang on, so how would you react? So rook d8, rook d8, rook b1.
Bishop a6 that you were mentioning, knight comes to a3, Peter, and king e7, I'm wondering if you have time, so that rook b6, you can meet it with rook d6 and then fall back to d8 if required.
Wow, maybe this is very precise, just in time. I mean, still very, very scary, but yeah, you have to make sure because if I'm getting to b5, then I think it's lost. Defend like this, yeah, that might be very, very important. Yeah, this is a good point. Maybe
I also like that you pointed out the white knight to fall to a3 and not to c3.
Exactly, because exactly the same variation with bishop c6, knight b6, knight c3, all nuance that after king e7, rook b6, Rook d6 is a nice defense because rook a6 is met by bishop takes f3 check. And maybe thanks to this tempo, you are just in time to defend with similar ideas as in as previously. But yeah, it's very scary. However, now after king f8, e4, black plays king, black goes e5. Looks very unpleasant for black because the knight might be able to jump back to d5, for example. On the other hand, Vasily relies on the fact that he will have rook d4. So whenever the knight moves, he's ready to get his rook to d4. And just to illustrate now, knight c3, if white gets knight d5, it's very unpleasant for black. Time to go rook d4. And now knight d5 check is nothing because actually white recaptures the pawn somehow. Then I have this very, very active rook whatsoever.
Also, you can't capture with the c pawn because the a4 pawn was hanging, and if you capture with the e pawn, the rook to b8 in that final position. So instead, he's trying to go h4, h5. I do like h4, h5, creating this slight space the pawns, but it looks like, especially with the king being centralized on e7, this pawn formation, black has managed to solve problems.
Yeah, I very much have the same feeling. The only real danger in the position is on b5. And in this regard, yeah, the rook right now, but I mean, white has to show some ideas. Yeah, definitely Magnus gonna play h4. However, it's also not really clear what do you really achieve on the king side. I mean, it looks like, yeah, Vasily managed to build up a very solid defense. But I mean, if Magnus manages to find one more, small question, yeah, h4 is played. Like if he can create some chance of opening up a file on the king, to get rook g1, and black will have to shift the attention to two open files. Yeah, Magnus first goes rook d8. He feels like he doesn't need the two rooks. He just needs one. And we'll try to create something here. Yeah, g5.
And g5 played, and if black actually trades on g5, then the h7 pawn after rook h1 might become a little uncomfortable to defend. Threats of rook h1 are quite annoying in such endgames. So after g5, he falls back with the bishop to e8. An interesting move because it can also look at targeting the f3 pawn at some point with moves like bishop h5. Or if you trade on g5, your bishop can come to g6, keep things under control. Bishop f7 would target the c4 pawn. So actually all these three squares, Peter, f7, g6, h5, serve a really nice purpose, which makes me feel that bishop e8 is actually a really good move.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we have been talking about the black bishop being on b7 completely blocked by white's pawn structure with f3, e4 pawns. And after bishop c6, bishop e8, I mean, the bishop from e8 eyes the a4 pawn. If it moves to f7, it will eye the c4 pawn. It kind of discourages white to try to play for a win. Nevertheless, still, nothing really changed. That white's only real idea is to get the knight to d5. But black seems to be ready that if you play knight c3, I might jump with rook b8 and I get the b file. I'm ready also with bishop f7. I mean, it looks like black is just in time to solve the problems instantly.
So rook g1 played. Magnus wants to go rook g7. And Peter, I'm going to ask you really quickly to get an evaluation on our other game, and we'll jump right back into this because, of course, this is going to be a long end game. Lots has happened on that board. I do see that black still has an extra pawn, but this extra pawn I feel should be... Wait, 1 second. Is that just a repetition with queen c1, queen c5? Because...
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Is he going to take on b5?
We are seeing the repetition. It's just a draw. I mean, if black captures on b5, then also white can actually just recapture the pawn with rook d6, and queen b1 check is met by queen f1. I mean, that's also a very solid position. And then one could argue that maybe because of the e5 pawn weakness, black is maybe the one who could eventually end up getting squeezed unless he has some very dynamic ways. So Radjabov decides to repeat, and it's a draw. I mean, it was a very complex game. We didn't really have time to look at it, but I mean, seeing what happened in the opening, it looked like a double-edged position, which finally kind of more or less by correct play fizzled out to a draw. And back,
right, so
yeah, and back to the Magnus game, because yeah, all eyes on Magnus. He's done to 2 minutes 40 seconds. Vasily is up on the clock by 2 minutes. I mean, yeah, it's clear that Magnus is trying to create something out of this position, but the big question is, you know, by trying, not that he over pushes, yeah? Okay, the drawing tendencies are there, but I do feel like, you know, Magnus really wants to create something out of this game, and if he's going low on the clock and he will sacrifice the c4 pawn at some point for initiative, all right, he's not, it's going to be a draw now.
So what is the point? You take on c4, rook c1, and black can just finish the game with trading the bishop and knight. But can black try for more actually with a move like bishop b3? Or then rook c5, bishop a4, knight c7, and that should be actually good for white.
Yeah, so takes. Yeah, I'm guessing rook c1. Black also has this nice little move first, rook d3 check, basically forcing white's king back to f2. And then black can take on b5. AB5, and okay, it's just going to be a draw after rook takes c5 and then b6. All the pawns will be exchanged, but the big question is also that what did then Magnus think about? I mean, he doesn't really have any winning chances. It's more like he's the one who has to defend. Then why did he at all go for this seemingly active play of rook g7 and h5 f4? I mean, I'm a little bit surprised.
All right, so rook g1 on the board. If black wants to keep the game going, so bishop c4 we saw just goes into all these trades. Would it help black to first take on f4, keep that bishop on f7 and try and enter with the rook to either d3 or d2? Is that something that black can try?
Yeah, but then after ef4, king f4, I somehow feel like, you know, this is maybe what Magnus is hoping, you know, that he might be able to get some active king or king f5, e5, and then after f takes e5, king e5, he might be able to use his combo of rook and knight and the active king to target maybe black's king. I don't know, I'm just assuming things. I mean, at least it makes some sense, but knowing that black can always capture on c4 doesn't really give me the feeling like, you know, Magnus really believes that he can put some pressure.
So Wesley just thinking right now if there's any way to keep the game going, because he obviously sees this line with bishop c4 and he goes for it. Peter, this is what you called out, takes, rook c1. He can give this rook d3 check. I do like it. You place your rook in a more active square to attack the white pawns on the board, and now you can just trade on b5. All the pawns will get traded. If black decides to keep the bishops on the board with a move like bishop b3, how could the game unfold then? Wait,
yeah,
what?
Probably anyway to give the rook because rook d3 check is not yet played. I mean, even then probably it would make a lot of sense to include this because, okay, bishop b3, basically I believe that white would take on c5, bishop takes a4, most probably white will take on e5 as well. And if I would have a king on e3, then I'm at least having an active king like this. But I'm not really understanding what black gets because the pawn on h5 is hanging. White will have a strong rook. Yeah, rook d3 check is played. We're going to see repetition here with rook d3, rook d2 check. I mean, I really have the feeling that this rook d2 check is connected with simply repeating the position. The rook e2 check, king f3 doesn't really feel like the right direction.
No, it doesn't. And if he's gone rook d2, then he has to either give d3 or e2 check. Rook e2, king f3, you have to trade on b5 anyway, because going bishop d3 will mean rook c5. Yeah, but Wesley,
look at this.
Rook e2. Wow.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, Wesley goes for it. Rook e2 check and bishop d3. Aha, okay, so that's what he wants. However, I do have knight d6, then you go c4. How do you play after knight d6?
Is rook c2 a move here?
Rook c2, yeah. It's a move.
Because rook d1, there is thankfully bishop e2.
Yeah, and also c4, and yeah, of course, winning the rook is the best. And otherwise, if I take on c2, then takes, and my a4 pawn is vulnerable. Yeah, this is definitely not desired. So yeah, rook takes c5 is played, rook takes e4, and now white gonna rely on knight c3 probably, and then capture on e5, and then take on a5 as well. It should be. But hang on, knight c3, rook c4, then takes king e4. Okay, that's a draw.
Peter, can you just have the line on the board that you're looking at? Knight c3?
Yeah, knight c3 hitting the rook, basically. And okay, if you take on h4, I'm gonna take on but still, rook c4, yeah,
Even after rook e5, there is a move like bishop c2 as well, because then you're threatening this rook h3 annoying check, and you're threatening the pawn on a4.
Yeah, this is tricky. So after rook e4 now, in fact, Magnus has to probably find a very precise move just to make sure that he is having things under control. I mean, you don't want to end up in some pawn down endgame. Yeah, knight c3 is on the board. So what does it mean after rook h4? Will he take on a5? Is that? But that doesn't feel right. I mean, then you have e4 check, whatever. I mean, rook takes e5 looks so much more natural, but rook e5 is maybe not working so nicely.
I have to say, it's actually very impressive the way it might still be a draw and not enough. But the fact that Wesley kept that pressure going when he had that repetition in that position with rook d3, he finds a way to still ask some questions. And even if it ends in a draw, there is this psychological factor of being black and being the one who's, who's sort of the one questioning here and asking all the questions. So I think it's very crucial that he decided to continue in that position, and very impressive.
Yeah, probably I have to take on a5, and after e4 check, king e3, and your e4 pawn and the h5 pawn kind of, the rook is overloaded on h4. Yeah, Magnus goes rook a5. There is probably just no need to panic. I mean, it does look like, why did Magnus create this for himself? That's the big question for me. I mean, he went for this g5, g takes f6, rook g1, rook g7 with the clear intention of trying to play for something. And then all of a sudden he backed down from his plan, or he didn't have a plan at all. And turns out that he's the one who has to fight for a draw. I mean, that's really a big turn of events. I just don't really see why it was necessary.
And after rook c4, white can't actually go for a rook and bishop versus rook endgame, because let's take a look. If he goes rook e5, rook takes e3, rook h5, there's bishop g6 winning on the spot. So he could not have gone for this theoretical draw endgame. So instead, he decides to fall back with the knight. And Peter, I don't think it's over yet. I see the evaluation bar still giving it as equal, but e4 is coming in. Let's see what happens after e4 check.
Yeah, but once you play e4, I will just move my king to f4, get my knight to e3, and claim that with this lovely blockading knight, I have zero problems. In fact,
so after h4 here, king f4, h4, you just go knight e3, or do you go rook h5?
Yeah, probably knight e3, and okay, that's it. Yeah, and Wesley, in fact, goes, I perfectly understand him, because you don't want to give such a nice knight for white. He goes for bishop c2. I mean, after knight d1, he opted for bishop c2. And knight e3, rook f4 check, basically making sure that he eliminates the pawn on a4, gives the pawn on e5, and the game eventually will fizzle out to a draw anyway.
King e2, and suddenly the engine bar doesn't like white's position so much. That could have something to do with it moving away from the h-pawn. He takes on a4, and as you predicted, a and
yeah,
e-pawn...
but now rook f5 check, I mean, it just a dead draw.
The game on the spot.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it was such a game, there was this very big miss by Wesley and Magnus that black had this shocker knight c5. Then later it looked like, Magnus got a very pleasant position and seemingly he had very nice possibilities, but then he kind of didn't use his momentum. He just relied on this strategical idea of just e4, king e3, and then black was in time to set up this lovely king e7, e5 defensive setup, activating his bishop via c6 to e8, and then made a rather comfortable draw. But at some moment I was really feeling that Magnus could create serious problems to Wesley at some point.
All right, Peter, because we couldn't see the board at that point. For those of you who are just joining us right now, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, Temur Radjabov are fighting for the third place. And that first game ended in a draw. But of course, our main match is between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and Wesley. So they have drawn their first game as well, but it was not without drama, because take a look at this. Peter, can you take us through this very critical moment that appeared on move 11?
Yeah, I mean, seemingly white has everything under control. It's a very solid position, a very typical position. However, as chess it is nowadays, with the engines, I mean, it's a very, very concrete game, and black could have had this incredible stunner move knight c5. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Magnus would have fallen from his chair after knight c5, because it has such a devastating effect when you realize that this move is possible because queen takes b4 runs into a5, attacking the queen, and after queen b5, black can even trap the queen with bishop c6 or with bishop a6, winning the queen and winning the game, which means that actually Magnus had nothing better after knight c5 than to retreat with the queen to c2, which would run into bishop e4, another stunning intermediate move, attacking the queen, using the fact that white is pinned and white cannot play the move queen d2, queen c1, which would keep an eye on the c3 knight due to knight b3 fork on his rook and the queen. And this would mean that actually white would finally have to settle for the very, very sad move queen d1, after which black takes on c3, b takes c3, and okay, you immediately know that white has to fight for his survival. I mean, okay, he has the two bishops, there are some pinning issues. I mean, it's not like this is a complete disaster, but certainly white is just clearly worse, and black has all the chances to play for a victory without risking anything.
Just amazing. And of course, we don't know if the players actually realized this after they missed it, but hopefully in the post-game interviews, we'll get an insight into that. Speaking of highlights and critical moments, I think the next critical moment that happened in this game, Peter, was when white had that option of trading the rooks and going rook b1. We were struggling a little bit to find the way for black to defend, but we found this idea of king e7. Maybe you can just take us through that second moment.
Yeah, I mean, at this position after rook e8, one feels that, you know, white has this very nice knight on b5, the bishop on a3 is very nice. White is the one who decides when he captures the knight, which structure he wants to play. That's basically the advantage of white, that he's calling the action. Also, his king is so much closer than black's king. So that's why we kind of got excited that Magnus is probably able to really get something out of this game, because the knight is also very powerful. It seems like the knight is dominating the bishop. I really like Magnus's move with f3, making sure that black's bishop is just shut down. I mean, this is a lovely pawn structure against the bishop on b7. And all the open files. And then after king f8, there was this very scary moment for my eyes, for my taste, that, you know, this rook takes d8, rook takes d8, rook b1. I was kind of even panicking, because the danger of, you know, getting eventually white retreating his knight and then entering with the rook on the b file looked really, really powerful. But then you spotted this incredible defense like bishop a6, knight a3, king e7, rook d6 can be met by rook d6, and after rook b8, rook d8 is played. And I see that we are joined by Alejandro Ramirez. Probably it would be a very nice moment to ask him also what did he think about the game.
We do have indeed with us Grandmaster Alejandro. Let's bring him on. Welcome.
Well, what a pleasure to be here with both of you. I was watching the entire game, and it kept seeing, after Wesley missed this beautiful knight c5, it just seemed to be a typical Magnus game. He put a little bit of pressure here, a little bit of pressure there, slight advantage. But what happened? It was Wesley at the end that turned tables around and started pressing for a win. And I've noticed this about Magnus. He gets kind of confident about some of his positions, and then sometimes he just goes a little bit too far, and he takes it a little bit too far. And it's his opponent that has some chances. From this position, could you ever imagine black being the one at some point up a pawn and Magnus having to make some precise moves to be able to hold the draw? And I know he gets very upset with himself when he lets go of his positions and when he gives his opponent chances. I don't think he's very happy that he was able to take a position like this with white and at the end have to make a couple of precise moves to defend in the endgame.
Wow, Ale, that's really interesting to hear. And I have to ask you, where do you think it turned around? Because you're absolutely right. You look at this position and it's so hard to imagine that it was Wesley in the end with the extra pawn. So where do you think that moment happened where suddenly Wesley was the one pushing?
I think sometimes you have this feeling that you have a powerful knight on b5, you have everything under control, you can just kind of pressure the entire board, and you can start seeing it with the moves like g4, h4, you open files on the other flank. The queen side is, of course, completely sealed. But then what happens? He puts a rook on g7, and almost immediately after that, he realizes, wait a second, what is my rook doing here? My pawn on c4 is actually weak. And he retreats it almost immediately, right? He goes f4, king f8. He needs to retreat it. And suddenly, what did he accomplish by putting a rook on g7, by spending all of these tempi opening the king side? c4 is weak. This is a light scored bishop. I mean, it's a completely different position for a dark scored bishop, but the bishop on f7 is alive. The pawn on c4 is currently attacked. And I think he just went a little bit too far. Luckily for him, it was well under control, and he is easily able to draw this position, but it's a little bit of a wake-up call, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, when he missed knight c5, one got the feeling he wasn't awake enough at that moment.
Knight c5, I have to agree with Peter. I mean, you see knight c5 and you're just in shock, right? The whole point is that this bishop on b4 is hanging. That's why the queen's on b3. The knight on a6 cannot move. But, you know, it's a big miss. I'm sure that Wesley will be told about this, but you kind of don't see it during the game. You just kind of move on. But I think we do have action in the other game.
Exactly, yeah, we have no time to slow down. I perfectly agree. This is also a very nice point, you know, that if Wesley didn't spot the move knight c5, I mean, nobody should ever tell him, you know, during today's match that there was this golden opportunity, because getting it out of your head will be simply impossible. You will be kind of thinking, what would have happened if I would have played knight c5? I mean, how would have Magnus reacted? Just forget about it. He has to move on. And now we see in Timur Radjabov, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave game that the anti-Grunfeld has been played by Timur. I mean, clearly, after seeing how Magnus was posing some trouble to MVL in this variation, it kind of felt like, let me try it. However, there Magnus did include the move h4 first, so it's a little bit different, but still, a queenless middle game which suits Radjabov's style, and we know that MVL is not exactly so happy to playing such endgames.
I always understand these endgames are equal according to the engine, but allowing the move e5 the way MVL has in this game, I always felt was counterintuitive. Yes, perhaps the engine finds a way to make this completely equal, but isn't this the whole point of why you gain a little bit of space, you ask a difficult question from black, how are you going to deal with this powerful pawn on e5? Are you going to ruin your structure? How are you going to defend g6? It just feels like white's always a little bit on the more pleasant side of these endgames. And as you said, Magnus posed some important problems in these kind of positions. And I don't know if MVL is fully answering them with this kind of approach. He's playing quickly. I assume it's still preparation, but I always felt white was the one pressing when you were allowed to put a pawn on e5. I liked some of the other structures and ways of dealing with this position better.
Yeah, I mean, to my eyes, you know, it feels like MVL, this anti-Grunfeld territory is kind of a very shaky spot, because, I mean, knowing that, you know, he's a very good Najdorf player and a very good Grunfeld player, you have the temptation from the white side to avoid all that territories. And when you are given a target like this, yeah, MVL, the super dangerous, the super dynamic guy, and then you can try to squeeze him in some endgame, of course you're going to go for it, yeah? I mean, I just perfectly understand also Magnus and Timur that they want to target him here.
You think of a Grunfeld player, you think of a Najdorf player, you think sharp, wild variations, and you give the opportunity of just taking the queens off the board on move 5. You're like, all right, let's take it. Let's try to torture this guy in a long end game. He is not forced to win this position with white. Why not try to torture him a little bit from the beginning? And again, positionally, I just never liked these positions for black so much. You would like to take on f3 and ruin the structure, but guess what? There's going to be a pawn on g6 exposed. It's still not entirely clear what you want to do with your bishop on f8. e6 might be an issue, an intermediate check, also uncomfortable. And yes, maybe this is okay, but look at black's pieces. It's just not fun to play these positions.
Exactly.
I have to agree with that. And also, this is exactly what Erwin was saying yesterday, Peter, that he was actually expecting Magnus to take this approach in their rapid games as well against Maxim's Grunfeld. Just get him out of the tricky middle games, just play an end game somewhere where Magnus seems to be doing so well, get Maxim out of that comfort zone. And Ale, I have to ask you, what did you think about that incredible semifinal that we witnessed yesterday between Magnus and Maxim?
No, it was just amazing. I think there were so many opportunities, right, for both players. It was just amazing because it seemed like it was going to be a typical Magnus show after the first half of the semifinal. And then, you know, it's like he's collapsing in positions where he usually does not collapse. And the fact that he was able to bring it in and win that first blitz game, I thought, okay, Magnus is back in his comfort zone. He's just going to finish this off. And then Maxime coming back. I mean, it was just a heart stopper. I loved watching it. So much action, but it's not typical Magnus. It's just, you don't see him collapsing from some of these positions. You don't see him blundering a piece the way that he did yesterday with the black pieces, trapping his home bishop on c5. It's such a strange blunder to make, and then kind of tilting a little bit there with the mouse slip. I thought, okay, this is difficult psychologically, but winning that first blitz game, I thought, wow, he's really back into it, right? Amazing presence of mind. But MVL coming back and winning the one after that, it's just amazing.
Absolutely. That was one semi-final I think we're going to be thinking about and talking about a lot, because that came down to the wire. Now, Magnus, while you're absolutely right, was a little shaky up and down. We saw him lose game 3 and game 4 with very uncharacteristic blunders. Meanwhile, Wesley just so impressive throughout the event in his knockout matches, especially against Duda and against Radjabov. Peter and I have been talking about how even this match is, although conventionally, whenever Magnus plays, you might put him as a favorite. But given the current circumstances, it's hard to pick a favorite in this one.
Well, it's hard to pick a favorite because Wesley already beat him once, right? So there's already precedent. But especially the way that both Wesley and Radjabov handle the tournament. You see a lots of ups and downs from all kinds of players, and they blunder, they have crazy attacks, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But both Wesley and Radjabov have had such stable positions. I mean, Radjabov didn't even lose a game in the first part of the event. And then Wesley, he just very rarely seems to be in trouble. When he's in trouble, maybe he's slightly worse. And he's just able to find all of these positions where he's putting either a very minor amount of pressure on his opponent, waiting for him to collapse, or he's just kind of chilling, defending a very comfortable position. It's such an amazing feat to do that in this rapid time control. Usually you see players making a strong strategical mistake or forgetting their opening, making a tactical blunder, but Wesley's able to have this calm, cool and collected type of method in chess, and he just has amazed me in this tournament and in the previous ones. He's just such a machine in this time control and online.
And Ale, that's exactly the kind of feeling that we've been getting, that he has just been flawless in his play so far. Now, I know that you've been friends and you've worked with Fabi for several years, and Fabi and Wesley, they're also teammates, but also rivals. So many times, I'm sure there have been preparations, openings, ideas that you try and come up with to counter this style of play of Wesley. Where do you find a way to strike with a player like that?
Well, it's difficult. I'll put it that way. Wesley is a very well-prepared player, and his openings, especially over the board, they're extremely solid. It's very difficult to find kinks in the armor. But I have to say that sometimes if you surprise Wesley in certain strategical positions, he might not be able to find his path very well. I remember that in a very crucial playoff in the Grand Chess Tour where Fabi had to win, this was after a Sinkfield Cup, Fabi and Wesley had to play playoff to see who got into the London Chess Classic. I believe this was 2018. Fabi was able to use a Queen A4 idea in the Nimzo, which was perhaps not even that great of an idea. But over the board, Wesley wasn't able to react well, got an uncomfortable position and wasn't able to survive it. So it is possible to find, problems in the openings or problems strategically in every single player. It's just that it's very difficult. And sometimes you have to take a little bit of a gamble, because a very solid approach against Wesley, the guy's just going to sit back and defend, and he's very difficult to beat.
Wow, yes, and Wesley has also impressed us with his opening prep, but I think, Peter, this is a key insight and something you mentioned as well, how Magnus starts. Is he able to surprise Wesley early on? Could be the way, and we see the second game, we do have liftoff, it's game on, and we see an Italian.
Yes, it's an Italian, and wow, I mean, knight f6, knight g5, I mean, definitely if you would have asked me to predict which opening line we're gonna see, this would have never ever crossed my mind. I mean, what's that? I mean, Wesley really going for this ultra sharp position against Magnus. I mean, this is not a typical Wesley.
Not at all. It's like he heard me and he said, no, Alejandro, I can play all kinds of positions. Let me show you how I can just take a pawn, defend it, even though there's a huge attack coming my way. This is a really fun opening, and I want to see how Carlsen handles it.
Really fun and actually a really entertaining opening. You're absolutely right. And I was thinking the same thing. We were having this conversation of how solid and strategic a player Wesley is. And here he is, just surprising us all. All right, now these are very theoretical lines and discussions. Give us some ideas, Ale. How does this proceed? What does White do? And what's Black's ideas here?
The funny thing is,
a pawn. So it's all about development.
I hate this position for white. I've always hated it, so I never really analyzed it because I know it's okay. And they're just blitzing out some amazing moves. Magnus is not down 1 pawn, he's down 2 pawns, he's given up the pawn on e5, but look at that development. And this is the reason I hate playing it with white. It's like, yes, you're up 2 pawns, but so what? There's so many things coming at you on the king side. I know that the engine, it says it's fine for both sides, you can just play it, it's about equal, but look at this position. So many things hanging. The knight on f3 has to be counter-sacrificed. Now it's Wesley that has 3 pawns. 3 pawns for a piece. But what's happened? The tables have turned a little bit. G5, G4 cost a little bit of time. That king on G8 is currently exposed. We have mayhem over the board, and I kind of love it. And the particular thing, I think you're just pointing it out, that knight on A5 has always been a thorn in every black player's games in these positions, because you're attacking on the king side and you would love to have it, I don't know, on G5, on G6, on E6, but look at it on A5. It's so far away from the action. I don't even know where to start in this position. The knight on f4 is attacked, but so many options already, and both sides clearly in some kind of prep.
Peter, this is absolute chaos on the board, and with Magnus just throwing everything he's got at Wesley with all those moves that were blitzed out, maybe you can just take us slowly through what just happened, because for many of us, I think that just went over our head. Let's just back up and go through some moves.
Yeah, I'm also not an expert in this line because I just felt like it's completely chaos. I mean, completely crazy. Why would I, from the black side, ever go for this? And from the white side, I also never really had the temptation. But the engines are, I think this is the justification. Engines are just way too strong nowadays. And now you can basically be sure that you might be able to analyze all these crazy positions and understand what's happening. I mean, imagine in my times, like 10, 15 years ago, when engines were still kind of shaky, we would never ever be sure that we can give a final judgment. You can just miss one move which the engines are not showing, and you might just get crushed. Now with the modern engine, this is already a little bit, the danger is reduced. And I do remember that Wesley had already played some game, or Levon has also played some game. I mean, I do recall some things. Probably we're gonna hear it from Sotiris. But one of the things, and also, Sotiris mentions that this is the course of Jan. I mean, Jan Gustafsson has written a course on this line, and also probably, Wesley covers this line in his course for white as well. So it's a chessable course versus contra chessable course between Wesley and Jan. It's gonna be a true spectacle here. Knight f3, sorry. I just wanted to quickly go over the game. So castles, this is still fairly understandable, that both sides try to castle. Now white plays rook e1, flashes the pawn on e5, and if black would lose time to protect this pawn, then probably black would give the advantage to white. I mean, he has no time to deal with this. He goes for the direct f5 option, giving the pawn on e5. White has to take the pawn because otherwise black goes e4. So black gets tempo with queen f6. Now after knight f3, knight has to retreat. Black goes g5. Now the g4 move threatens to trap white's knight. So basically, white doesn't have a choice but to go for this craziness with c4. Himself, knight f4. The bishop has to retreat. Black goes g4. The knight is trapped. But basically, that's what is it all about, that white is ready to sacrifice the knight for activity. So takes happens, and knight e6, queen c3. Finally, at least Magnus is kind of thinking. I wonder who has the better preparation here.
So
well, Magnus is thinking.
Go on, Ale.
Magnus is thinking, right? And apparently we're being told that this is covered by Wesley, so clearly in some kind of preparation. I was always terrified of playing these positions, not so much because what was the objective evaluation of the position, but in such a sharp position and in a very rapid time control, I was always told, the side with the initiative will be the one that you prefer in a rapid time control. And it's so unclear to me exactly who has the initiative here. Black has all of his pieces developed, but the coordination, it's a little bit strange. You are attacking the pawn on d4, but look at what you have to do with the knight. Going back to b7, it's not going to be part of the game for a little bit. And white has some tempting ideas. You could go c5, bishop c4. You can start thinking about pushing with d5. Endgames, we can start thinking about them, but do they really favor black? You're up a piece, but look at the pawns that remain. They're all very weak. Your king's a little bit exposed. It's never a fun thing to have. Such a wild position. But look at that clock. Wesley, 17 minutes, clearing his prep. Now, a little bit of a strange thing to me. Knight b7 looks like the most natural move in the position because knight hanging, knight has to move. But Wesley's thinking after it.
And also we see that the d4 pawn is now attacked. So perhaps he's just trying to find a way. What is the way to defend it? You can't go bishop e3, I think, because there's f4 coming up. Moves like c5 or d5 come to mind. Otherwise, you just lose the d4 pawn. A very critical moment for Wesley here. And I see the evaluation bar just giving its favorite evaluation of 0.0, but these are the kind of positions where you just don't understand what the engine means, because this is just anything but equality. I mean, Black's got this extra piece. White has got 3 pawns for it. I don't even know who you would pick to play. This is just such a difficult position to understand. Ale, if you had to be white or black, who would you choose here?
Honestly, I would be white just because I like the pawns. And I would start thinking, okay, maybe my chances in an endgame are not so bad in this position. I would start thinking about something like immediately throwing the move d5 in. I don't know, it's complicated. It really comes down to the next couple of moves. I wouldn't be surprised about the player spending a serious amount of time in this position upcoming, because it's going to be very key. How do you transition into any potential endgame? Do I want to keep the pieces alive? Which ones of the pieces do I want attacking and which ones do I need securing the structure? And, you know, you said it yourself. I mean, this is not an equal position. We used to have my favorite informant symbol, unclear. You know, the lazy way of analyzing chess. What is this position? Oh, unclear. We'll just figure it out over the board. And engines got so strong that you keep analyzing and trying to find the truth of the position. But here, it seems like it's a never-ending abyss, right? There's so many possibilities for both sides. Honestly, I'm eyeing the move d5. D4 is hanging. I would like to develop my pieces, but I don't have a clear way to do so. This bishop on c1 in particular, I'm very curious on where it's going to go. The knight on e6 does such a wonderful job of controlling it, and that's why I'm really looking at the move d5 just to expel the knight. But it's c5 that's played instead, a move that I had mentioned before. Wow, what a crazy game.
I think I agree. Unclear and interesting would be the two vague words that we would use to describe this position that is absolutely wild. Peter, what do you have to say about the evaluation, this position, and the decision to go c5?
Well, I mean, basically, I don't dare to give any kind of evaluation. It's just a crazy mess. But one thing we did hear from Sotiris mentioning that so far this was the game between Levon Aronyan and Vidit. And Levon played the move 18th, move c5, and probably that was the move that Magnus kind of anticipated and had preparation. And probably that was the reason why after queen c3, which is a novelty, and the novelty which Wesley actually describes in his Chessable course covering this line and saying, apparently he has tons of analysis on this position, mentioning that, yeah, Black's pieces are a bit misplaced. That's one thing that we are also understanding. However, how the position unfolds, and look at this, he goes c5, bishop c7, and b4, basically making sure that he activates his bishop with bishop b2, targeting Black's king. This is a long-term idea because White wants to strike with bishop c4, bishop b2, and then look at those diagonals. I mean, those diagonals are eyeing Black's king. The knight on b7 is kind of stuck. I mean, the c5, b4 moves were really incredible by Wesley.
I think the defining characteristic of this position, something that you and Ale have both mentioned, that Black has an extra piece, but the problem is that the pieces are not harmonious at all. The knight on b7, still there's a lot of development to be done. Now, whenever there's a move like b4 on the board, the first reaction that comes to my mind is always to break it with a5. And I want to ask you and Ale about this move. Is that something that Black can consider? And if yes, is White planning to go b5 here?
Well, I guess I'll take that first. A5. Wow. You know, my first instinct is I'm so weak on the other side of the board. I don't know if I have the time to make such a move. I would immediately be worried about something like bishop c4, starting to attack, ignoring the threats on the queen side. I would calculate that for a bit, see if they really do work out. I mean, a takes b4, maybe there's something like queen b3 or queen e3. I start to check if there's going to be a follow-up with d5 or bishop b2. I'm not so worried right now about my structure if I can immediately get these bishops in the game. And I think Peter was absolutely right on that, right? These bishops are so threatening on the king side. We are being told, though, that this is all considered in Wesley's course, that a5 is the main line. But if you don't know that this is the move, if you don't know that it's a5, you look at your position, you think, I have so many weaknesses. Can I really afford a move like a5? But he is the world champion and he's got such a great dynamic understanding of the position. Maybe he just knows he needs to get all of his pieces into the game and that he needs to break the structure with a5.
Yeah, actually, one of my very first questions also after e5, if I would be considering from the black side that, okay, e5, I understand that I want to break the structure. But what do I achieve if white goes b5? Because, I mean, basically this moves like a5, b5, I trade the c6 pawn, then I will have two connected pawns and I will still have the same ideas with bishop c4, bishop b2. I mean, those would be, you know, my first thoughts, like, what do I achieve with a5, b5? If the answer would be, I don't know, which probably it would be, then I would definitely be encouraged to look for another move. And look at this.
Magnus goes for it. He goes for it. And b5 blitzed out. Actually, when I asked you this question, I thought a5 was the natural response to a move like b4, but b5 is exactly what I thought could be very topical here. And I want to ask you a very direct question as well, which I think a lot of us might be wondering. Why can't black take on d4?
With what, though? You want to take with the queen or with the knight? I think with the knight, you run into bishop b2 problems.
Peter, let's just have that on the board. I think queen d4, you trade the queens and there's bishop c4 check and then bishop b2, which could just be very dangerous. Is that right?
Probably. And also some b6 is also hanging in the air. So for example, king g7, yeah, bishop b2. And if, also rook e7 check, I mean, you even cannot, you cannot really do anything. I mean, king h8 runs also into all kinds of mating ideas. So no, you can't really do this. This means that probably you will have to play if you consider taking on d4 with the knight, but it also looks very scary.
Very scary because it opens up the long diagonal.
It's also very scary to do nothing. There's a pawn on b5 coming to b6. The bishops are very developed. He needs to do something quickly, right? He can't just play a natural move. He needs to take action, and taking on d4, it might not be pretty, but is there any real alternative at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ideas that I kind of had in mind from the black side that of knight d4, if white would to play bishop b2, definitely I would play knight f3 check and I would feel kind of relieved that maybe I have something, but it's also probably just nothing because white can actually just fall for it and take with the pawn. And let's not forget that those kind of checkmating ideas are there, but still, I mean, it shows that it's a super sharp position. Magnus goes queen takes d4, wow.
We were just looking at this line.
What happens in the line that we were looking at? Queen takes d4, knight takes d4. You want to throw in that check. Where's the king go? Or do you play something? You cannot play something ugly like rook f7 even. Maybe you just give up the piece immediately with bishop e6.
Yeah, but
that's very ugly, right?
Yeah, it's like fighting for survival, but probably it has to be done. I mean, the king cannot move. I cannot imagine the king moving. King h8 is just out of question. Yeah, bishop e6, good or bad, has to be played.
Maybe it's not so bad. White's pieces are still on b1, c1, a1. If somehow a rook can get to d8, it might be a little bit embarrassing for white to defend that first rank.
Exactly. I mean, it feels like almost like a marshal, no? That, I mean, suddenly, yes, it's not like targeting white's king immediately, but still fighting against white's development.
And here as well, I see there could be a line like knight c5. After knight c3, you can maybe take knight c5, rook c6, knight e4, taking advantage of that back rank weakness. There's so much going on. You can't take on c7 because of knight c3. There's bishop b2, just a completely wild position.
Yeah, but this one looks good for white, no? I mean,
yeah, bishop b2 consolidates.
Yeah. Finally, the rook is alive, yeah? what a relief. I mean, completely crazy. I'm wondering, you know, Magnus has also not been spending so much time. I mean, yes, it looks like he's behind on the clock, but if he's not in preparation, I mean, making all these decisions over the board, just in like 3, 4, 5 minutes, it's still very, very tough and difficult.
It's very difficult to make decisions in this position, and then sometimes I think you just need to make one, because if you keep falling behind on the clock, especially against somebody that's clearly well prepared in this variation, maybe he doesn't remember this exact position, but he knows the ideas, he knows where the ball is rolling, and you fall behind too much on the clock, and you could reach an okay position but just not be able to defend it. It's not like this is going to fizzle out into equality anytime soon. So Magnus makes a decision, Wesley's thinking, but it just seems like queen takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop c4 check will be played. The question is, does black have enough at the end to justify going into this? Let's call it a sacrifice, right? He's returning the piece, but he's going to be down 1 or 2 pawns.
But you know, I think I kind of understood what black should be doing after rook e6. Not go for the d file, but go for the e file. Rook a8, hitting white with rook e1, and also slattering with bishop e5, hitting the rook. Maybe that's the justification. And we are also getting told by Sotiris that in fact Wesley so consider this move queen takes d4 not so precise and not good because of the stunning bishop c4 move, not the trade on d4. I mean, imagine if you blitz out bishop c4, knight takes c5, and then apparently some bishop a3 is...
No, you have to take on c3 first because your queen is hanging.
Ah, yes, sorry, of course, yeah. I mean, you take on c3, knight takes, knight b takes c5, and then bishop a3 being the point, and it's all written down in Wesley's course. The point is that all these lines are so crazy, and probably Wesley has been analyzing so many positions, not expecting this line to happen. I mean, he also can't really remember all his analyses.
But this is stunning, right? Even though black's up a piece, he just can't hold the position together, even for equality.
Yeah, amazing.
And we do see the evaluation bar confirming this analysis that you're giving, that white does seem to have a really strong move. Bishop c4, Wesley has covered it in his course with detail, and he says queen d4, not such a good move because of this. But the question is, can he remember it or can he find it?
Yeah, usually, I mean, when you know at least the ideas, then it's kind of possible to find it. On the other hand, you know, if he would have remembered it, he would have already blitzed it out, because he also would have known that, okay, I mean, you just hit the champion with this, and okay, no matter who you are, what kind of champion you are, I mean, in a rapid game to be hit with all these moves, it should be almost impossible to react. But by slowing down, spending time, I mean, showing the sign that he's also not 100% sure how to continue, this definitely gives also some confidence for Magnus, because he knows that finally the game will be played over the board, and if it's difficult for him, it should be also very difficult for Wesley to orientate here.
All right, a very critical moment, Peter. Ale, we'll come back to this, but I also see absolute madness in our other game. White's king is all the way on a5, and I don't know what to make of this position. I mean, how did the king get there? What is this? What is going on here?
Well, it looks busted. That king on a5 is actually a really good piece, but what happened to black's structure? And is he also down a pawn?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, something really happened. I mean, after bishop f4, bishop h6, that's where we left. The computer disliked the move bishop g3 and was thinking that black is suddenly perfectly fine, but he played the move king g7, which was not according to computer's liking. And then we did get to this position. Now the bishop was kind of threatened to be trapped. Maxim gave the pawn, and that's how this whole adventure of white's king started. That first he was forced to do so, and secondly, he probably got the appetite for it, that, aha, hang on, but this is lovely. I mean, my king is marching, and it's getting perfectly safe.
Yeah, it's not going to get checkmated anytime soon. But Wesley doesn't remember his prep.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go back there. I mean, it's incredible, because now maybe Magnus will be the one who benefits from this.
So Wesley actually traded on d4 before going to c4. Let's just back up and see how this got here.
Yeah, I mean, this was also the only move that we really had on our radars, yeah, because queen takes d4 looked so natural, and yeah, this bishop c4 was the incredible, powerful computer move. But if you don't know it or you don't remember it, I mean, it will not cross your mind, and we are seeing this so-called natural way of things developing, but this might be just fine for black now, thanks that we discovered this rook a8 idea.
Well, rook a8 was so powerful, I was starting to wonder if black can start pushing, because again, it comes down to these pieces on a1, b1, c1 not being developed. White, yes, you're currently up one pawn, but, well, I'm assuming you're going to lose one of these pawns on the queen side. Are you going to be able to fully
I'm also assuming
develop?
that, maybe white has to pull some emergency break and maybe take with rook e6 and then hope that thanks to the bishop pair and quick development, you will have enough compensation to make a draw. But I'm also perfectly on your side. This bishop e6, knight e6, rook e6 looks so scary that you might just end up losing the game. I don't know. It's maybe rook takes e8, bishop d2. Is that a way avoiding the total disaster? But who has the nerves for this?
Well, he's going to have to find it now that he didn't remember, right? As you said, he needs to pull the brakes. I don't know how many paths he will have to a clean position in which he can hold on, because there are some tactical problems. Bishop e5 is always on the air. When the rook on e1 disappears, the rook on a1 might be trapped. He has taken with the bishop, so perhaps he is going straight into this line. The world champion has a couple of choices, but rook e8 seems by far the most natural. Exchange white's only powerful piece and see what he can do with the rest of them.
Yeah, by the way, even there is a move like knight takes c5 and then rook takes c6, bishop e5, winning the exchange, but at least then white would more or less consolidate. So it's not something I'm really worried from the white side, but even that position could be unpleasant because I'm running the risk of getting some very quick rook a8, trading down my rook, and my pieces and my back rank is still feel very, very loose.
It's this knight on b1, right? If it was in a decent position, you wouldn't even need to think about it. Of course, white's better. He has 2 pawns for the exchange, a powerful passer on b5, but it's the lack of coordination, and it's already moved 27. And the guy hasn't moved his minor pieces. I go to my students and tell them, play with all your pieces, and then they look at Wesley doing this. How can I explain it?
All right, so what's the way then? This looks really bad for black. As you're pointing out, white has got no development, so that kind of nullifies the compensation in that position. After rook e6, Peter, you pointed out this other defense. Let's try and take a look at that, because rook e8 looks very strong here, and then bishop d2 was the line that you're looking at. After bishop e5, is the idea to go bishop c3 or knight c3?
Actually, bishop c3, but also, both moves were possible. I felt like, finally I survived. Yeah, I'm developing. Yeah, it's already such a relief. One of the lines, why I was not liking bishop c3 so much, not that I'm going to be countered with bishop d4, but then I have king f1 anyway, keeping things under control, but just a horror position. On the other hand, if bishop d2 holds for white, then I'm tempted to try knight takes c5, because I'm not really seeing this rook takes c6 working out nicely for white. And if after knight c5 you will have to kind of retreat in order to be able to start defending, then black might simply have the initiative for free.
But also, where are you going to retreat?
Sorry, go on, Ale.
Because I was thinking if rook e2, you can still go something like rook e8 and challenge this rook, because you don't have bishop e3, right, at the end?
Exactly. It's...
So bishop e3 is met by bishop...
Just f4, e3? I thought.
Bishop f4. Or f4.
Oh, just f4, yeah.
f4, yeah.
Yeah, basically I might have to go for the very same line with the tempi down, which certainly doesn't feel right.
No. I think even bishop b5 or knight e4 ideas are so strong, but even if I don't have them, c takes b5 looks like such a nice endgame. You have so much activity, these pawns are rolling.
Black doesn't even have an extra pawn in this position.
Nope.
White doesn't even have an extra pawn in this position. Isn't it weird how first Wesley missed this idea with knight c5 with the black pieces, and then with the white pieces he misses this move bishop c4, which apparently is also part of his prep. I'm kind of surprised with the way the opening has turned out, and in both these cases we see the advantage slipping to Magnus.
It's always such a bad feeling when you have prep and it's really deep and it gives you a winning position and your opponent falls for it, and instead of playing the move that gives you a winning position, you play the other move and you have to defend a horrible position after revealing your entire preparation.
Exactly. I know it for myself, because that's the problem. The more deep you go, the less you can remember, because those are not anymore logical moves. You are consulting the supercomputer, and whenever those critical positions arise, then you let the computer think, and then after very, very big depths, you copy paste the analysis, and then you feel like, yeah, everything is under control. thanks to the computer. But I mean, try to figure it out yourself. I mean, even sometimes, you know, in old times, people would spend 1 week of analyzing with their hands, and they would not come up with the final conclusion. And now, thanks to the supercomputer, it looks like, you know, in very little time we are able to create some brilliant analyses. But do you remember them? And those are the scary moments. Like, yeah, you have the brilliant preparation and then you go for the direction, but you don't know the follow-up and end up getting into trouble.
And we have knight c5 on the board. It's the big question. Do you take on c6 and try to bail out on that kind of ugly endgame, or do you keep material with rook e1, rook e2, something like that? But you might be running into that. And he goes rook e2. He says, I've calculated it all. I have it under control. I want to see what he plays against rook e8. Will he just go something like king f1? Does he? I don't think you can take on e8. That just looks ugly.
Yeah, but you can't even play king f1 because takes bishop e5 wins on the spot. Yeah, the same idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking bishop a3, but it's not enough at all. You have a check on e8.
And then
no, I don't know then.
Well.
And I don't know what his plan is after rook f8, and it's on the board.
Yeah, it's on the board. I mean, you know, I was kind of not joking that takes bishop d2 and I have to play pawn tempi down this terrible position, because it was kind of the only move that avoids losing. I just don't see how can I survive otherwise.
And is knight c3 something that can be considered, or is again white losing something on the spot? Because it just looks like such an easy position to make a blunder and lose your rook on a1.
Knight c3 maybe.
This is a good, this is exactly the move that you want to play from the white side. I mean, develop, finally get this rook out of the danger zone, also solving the first rank issues. Yeah, definitely it looks like black has very nice position, but you avoid any kind of disaster.
I mean, if you're not losing on the spot, then knight c3 is exactly what you want to play. Let's just look at some lines, what happens. So bishop e5, white would still have everything under control with bishop b2.
Yeah, also I don't like that white finally has a threat, right? Or a semi-threat that at some point this rook could come to e1 if I move my knight from c5 and don't have knight d3. I was thinking maybe you just take on b5 instead of even pushing with bishop e5 and saying, look, I'm going to play b4 next move. Your knight is pushed out of the way. Yes, maybe you're going towards the center, but now I'm running my pawns on the queen side.
But now, Ali, can't white go bishop e3 because the rook on e2 is defended? So you say you want to also try and develop. I get it. It looks bad, but just trying to play a devil's advocate here.
No, we have to calculate, right? Because bishop e3, I have b4. You might have to go knight d5. I don't know if you can really play bishop takes c5 and allow this pawn to go to c3. I don't know. It becomes a little bit confusing. I think black does have to make some decisions after the move knight c3.
Bishop e3, b4, you also have to be careful about moves like knight d5, because suddenly white is also hitting the bishop on e7 as well as threatening the knight on f6. Ideas like knight f6 check.
That's very true. I missed that knight f6 is a threat, because in my mind I had put the other rook on e8. Actually, and I forgot that Magnus put the rook f on e8. I don't know why I naturally put the rook a on e8 and it just stayed on my mind. But in those cases, knight d5, knight f6 is just not a possibility. Maybe here, yes, you do have to go something like knight c3, bishop e5. Let's see. And knight c3 on the board.
On the board.
Yeah, knight c3 on the board. And the big question is, what does black do? I mean, it feels very, very nice. There are all kinds of promising possibilities. But everywhere white seems to kind of getting out. Yeah, if you trade on e2, knight e2, and then you take cb5, white will eventually have knight d4 ideas. Not immediately, of course. First, he makes sure that he develops. But then suddenly black's pawn on f5 can be a target, so you don't want to do that. On the other hand, we have seen that somewhere white might be able to use the d5 square if black captures on b5. So it's a very, very tough decision now also on black to find the right way.
So what happens if I do go rook takes c2, knight takes c2, c takes b5? What would be white's move in this position? Because there's still some annoyances, right? There's some jumps, there's the f2 square. I don't know, do you just go bishop e3 and is it true that white just consolidates too quickly?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I would like to get the tempo. Yeah, Magnus goes cb5, so we might be... No, he goes cb5 immediately, yeah. Mm-hmm. The original line. And now the big question after bishop e3, how do we control the situation?
Maybe bishop e5?
bishop e5, and after rook c1, you still have an annoying move like knight d3.
Right.
So does white just trade these two knights with bishop c5, but then bishop c3? It looks a bit unpleasant, no? b4 come, you have to take on e8, rook e8, rook c1 with these two pawns on the queen side. I don't like white's position here.
Yeah, I can even start with a move like rook e2, so you don't have bishop e3 locking out my rook.
Very nice. Because rook c3 is not a threat because of the back rank problems.
Yeah, this is actually quite annoying. So maybe do I have a different way of dealing with this position? I mean, takes bishop d2, how bad it is. Okay, I hate those sentences which start like how bad it is, but I mean, can I try to, okay, you're gonna push b4 and
right, because bishop d2, b4, knight d5, maybe rook d8.
Yeah, rook d8. This is very unpleasant. This is very unpleasant. I mean, I don't want to let this happen. And look at this now. Wesley is also under 4 minutes. It's certainly a very, very unpleasant position from white side to defend because black's play is so much easier.
Bishop e3 on the board, so he doesn't like the other variation.
Yeah, probably he has to go for this, yeah. Because after all this line, yeah, and we are seeing this line with rook c1, rook e2 is met by king f1. That's my, Wesley even goes rook b1. But basically, I like that after rook c1, rook e2, I still had king f1.
Ah, that's very important, yes.
Yes, basically, thanks to this, I felt like maybe I'm going to survive, but it was anyway very scary. We're going to see probably this line anyway, yeah, b4, king f1. I mean, usually Magnus is so powerful in these positions. Yeah, he goes rook e5. He also has this idea of, just bringing his king to c4 because white's king on f1 is kind of stuck. He also has this other plan of, if the bishop leaves the diagonal, the pressure against the b4 pawn, then to go a4 and then all kinds of b3, a, b3, a3 ideas, winning the game immediately are there. So very, very tough. Yeah, bishop e3, a4, rook c1. Now it feels like he's losing a tempo compared to the rook c1 variation.
But he was forced to, right? Because b3, a3 was already a threat.
Yeah, it was. It was. And now still king e2 is not possible due to f4. I mean, it's one more detail that white has to pay attention.
So how do you make progress here with black? I would like to bring my king, but I assume white's next move, if giving something free, is g3 and then king e2.
a3.
So he goes a3, threatens b3 again.
Is it a threat, rook c3?
No,
I was hoping
it's
not yet
a threat. Probably it's not yet a threat. Yeah, g3 is played, but I mean, still this boxing issue is very, very annoying.
And if he starts with bishop b, he starts with rook b5. Now it's definitely a threat because b3, rook c3 is met by b2, and if you capture the bishop on c3, then there's ba2, rook c1, rook b1.
Yeah.
So how is white actually fighting b3?
Yeah,
does he have to
go rook c2 maybe, yeah? Maybe rook c2 and then, rook c2 played. I mean, he needs to get bishop d2 or bishop c1 depending on the situation, but I feel it might be too slow.
Okay, so
what happened to bishop e2 here?
Finally, I will have some check and getting my rook behind the pawn, yeah? It's not over yet, but of course it's very bad.
Yes.
This is very, very scary. And we don't need to switch, but just a quick update because I'm seeing the other board as well. Things are looking very scary for Maxime as well, Peter. I think Raja is going to be the player to call first blood in their match. That king on a5. Whoever said the king is a piece in the endgame was absolutely right in this game.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just very, very quickly for 5 seconds, we're going to jump there so that people understand what we are talking about. Yeah, white's king on a5 is perfectly safe. Okay, you have to be careful not to get checkmated like this, but yeah, white will just put the pawn to a4 and there are no issues there. Black is completely paralyzed, the powerful pawn on g7. I mean, it looks like it should be a win for white.
It's actually
you can even
crazy.
start thinking of putting the king on b7.
You box your own king on a5 and there's just no check that black can ever dream of. There could be some scenarios actually, rook f3, a4, and if black gets the other rook to b5, but none of that is going to happen.
Yeah, he just goes for this forced layer, rook e7, rook e7, rook g8, and in fact he's winning. because rook d8 check is a threat. You cannot really stop this pawn. You have to go rook g4, but then bishop e7, king e7, rook c8 wins the game. I mean,
yeah, it's just over.
Let's just show that.
Threatening g8, and if black takes, then white exchanges the rook and just wins the pawn endgame. So wow, very nice win by Teimur Radjabov. So he's gonna take the lead, but we're gonna jump right back to the Magnus game because okay, that's what the most exciting thing is right now.
That king on g2. It's been the theme of the game. He can't bring the pieces where he wants to.
Exactly. I mean, just because we missed out that Wesley went for king g2. If he goes king e2, then probably rook b2 wins on the spot because rook takes b2, a b2 queens the pawn, and otherwise black continues with a2. So kind of not a nice scenario that white king even has to get away from the action, but you even have to lose a tempo.
Oh, I love bishop e5, controlling the c7 square so he doesn't have that idea of relocating the rook.
But can he insist with bishop f4? Oh, then you've got rook b2 maybe.
No, but you can just simply take and play rook b7 and you go rook a7. That's elemental win.
Yeah.
I mean...
That's very nice. Just the rook behind the pawn and then your king marches forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, Wesley in a lot of trouble.
Meanwhile, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has resigned. So Teimur Radjabov taking the lead in their match. Very nice.
Oh, he really went for bishop f4.
Yeah, probably there was nothing else because, okay, already otherwise rook b2 and a2 was winning the game. But I mean, bishop f4 is just equal to resignation because this bishop f4, gf, rook b7, rook a7 is the elemental win without any chances for white to survive.
And he goes for it. This is going to be 0-1.
Yeah. That's it.
Impressive. a positioning which he just knows less about.
I mean, I know they say that you make your own luck on the chessboard, but I have to say Wesley plays this line, this opening, which is clearly prep. Otherwise, you don't play these kind of openings. And then he gets exactly the kind of position he needs and then misses the key move, which would have given him the advantage. And that's the moment where it all turned around.
Razor sharp positions. This is what it comes down to. Yes, you might have amazing prep, but from working with somebody that, you know, really is very good at sharp positions and has a lot of prep, sometimes when he forgets one move, you know, things turn around very, very quickly. And Wesley in this position, yes, he knew more, but if it was this important detail that he missed, now he has to think about it over the board. In a rapid game, you just might go wrong. And in this case, it was just this queen takes d4 that precipitated a series of events that landed him in a bad endgame. And, well, a huge win for Magnus, taking the lead here in the first half of the finals. What a great way to start with the black pieces.
With the black pieces. And Peter, what is the easiest thing for black to do to convert this now? How does it go? So he's going to come back with the king to g3. And does black bring the king to the other side of the board? What's the way for black here?
Yeah, basically white is going to be Zugzwang. White is trying, you know, to get this king h4 going, but actually now king h4 already even runs into rook takes f4, and then king h5, rook a4 back, and then if king marshes, there will be rook h4 checkmate. I mean, even those ideas, but they are even not important. I mean, just make sure that you don't blunder anything, you control everything. I think that Magnus basically doesn't want to give the slightest chance already to his opponent. I'm pretty sure that just bringing the king to the queen side might be enough, but also it's very tempting not to give white any chances of, you know, getting active.
I would have never played h5. That's why I'm never going to be as good as Magnus.
Or at least not as quickly, no? I mean, the move h5, it's such a committal move that usually you don't want to do that in few seconds.
Right, but he's very confident in this endgame. He plays h5, king h4, immediately defends the pawn and says, this doesn't matter. I know exactly how to win this.
Yeah, clearly his idea is that if the king cannot move back to h4, he will be Zugzwang, then he wants to lock the position down with h4. Yeah, he's making a triangle with his king. Yeah, that king h4 probably wants king h6, and then yeah, king yeah, and now that's
h4.
it. I mean, Magnus got his dream.
That's actually a very instructive point. The triangulation that you were talking about, which would have forced this scenario anyway. If white comes back, you go king h6, you get the same position, but it's white to move. King h4 now means rook f4 check. So king f3 would have been met by h4. So you've blocked the king side completely, and now he's going to march with his king to the other side, get it towards the pawn, also to e4 could be an idea, and this is going to end very badly for Maxime.
Wow, what a great game. It's just from the opening, Magnus not afraid to go into something that his opponent knows. He even made a whole course about it. It doesn't even seem like he checked the course, right? It's not like he had an opening idea prepared against it. The information was out there, but Wesley just wasn't able to remember it. And after that, it was just the Magnus show yet again, right? He gets one of these really good positions, hammers it down, never lets his foot off the gas. Just great performance.
Yeah, well, actually, it's incredible stuff. You know that now that it worked out, I think Magnus will be very happy. But imagine if Wesley would have blitzed out his course with bishop c4 and then bishop a3, and Magnus losing like that. I think he would go crazy with his team. I mean, he would say, guys, I mean, I understand I don't have the time. I'm playing non-stop. But I mean, that's your job, no? I mean, to check everything, and Wesley already covered it. I mean, everybody, we are advertising these courses because they are just fantastic. And then Magnus going for it, for the line that Wesley has just covered and not knowing what's in the course. I mean, now that it worked, it's not a problem, but otherwise it would have been a terrible disaster, not only for Magnus, but for his team as well.
It's such a wonderful time to be a learning chess player. There's so much information out there. All these chessable courses, you know, I buy them, I look at them, and they're so full of interesting ideas from any level, right? You can learn the structures, they're explaining it very well, but also opening novelties that work. Look at this level of chess, right? This is just amazing. What a time to be alive as a chess player. We see Magnus putting the finishing touches here in this game. Just amazing.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that all these players actually use their own course and the openings that they have in these courses in their own games against each other is just such a big proof and validation of the kind of work that they put in. They're not really trying to hide anything, but just putting their prep out there for all of us to take. And you're absolutely right. I think this is just unprecedented. And with that, Magnus Carlsen wins game 2 of his set 1 in the final. What a fantastic game, as Ale pointed out. An opening that was absolutely wild and complete chaos on the board. One big miss by Wesley, and then it was all Magnus. Peter, I want you to take us through the highlights of this game. Let's start with that very critical moment that we were just talking about.
Well, I think the whole game was very critical. I mean, it all started with the opening. I will not go very deep, just to show that, yeah, it did feature this very, very ultra sharp line. I mean, completely crazy line, which has now also a lot of new twists. And we are seeing that both players had been really well prepared. I mean, they kind of both knew what they are doing till up to a point. And then exactly when the critical moment came, like, you know, in a classical game or in a world championship, you would say that that's the starting moment of the preparation after this queen c3. But clearly, this being a rapid event and the players very, very exhausted, already it's clear that you don't have the time and energy to make all the time, you know, preparation. And somewhere you also have to bluff, you have to take your chances. Certainly, this was all analyzed by Wesley in his chessable course. And after a5, b5, queen takes d4 was mentioned by Wesley that it's not a good move because of the stunning bishop c4. I mean, a move that we had been here, and also our attention was drawn to the fact that, wow, queen takes d4, knight d4, bishop c4 looks so nice for white. I mean, it looks very tempting to go for it, but in fact, it's a terrible mistake. The stunning bishop c4, forcing black to take on c3 because now the pin is there. Queen takes c3, knight takes c3, and the incredible computer point of knight b takes c5, answered by the very quiet bishop a3 move. I mean, when you know it, you say, of course this is happening because black's pieces are completely tied, all these crazy pins are there, and black is in a lot of trouble. But if you don't know it, then it simply doesn't come natural at all.
And just amazing. And now that you're pointing it out, it's clear the whole point is about development, pinning that knight and winning some moves so that your pieces can come out with tempo. And this was the crucial moment. This is why we all need to get our hands on that course. You study these kind of things, and then you know that you have to play bishop c4 here. Wesley could not remember it, couldn't find it in that moment, and that's when it all slipped. Magnus Carlsen leads set 1. We're going to have game 3 action very soon. Temur Radjabov also leading his match currently against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. You don't want to miss the excitement of game 3. We've got a Grandmaster, star commentator of the Grand Chess Tour, Alejandro Ramirez, with us also. We'll be right back.
Fresh, so new. Freedom! It's all for you. All for you. Freedom! Keep your ear to the ground. Talking about the freedom! It's the best show in town. Best show in town. Freedom!
Super discounts on merchandise. Massive sales on courses from Chessable. Chessable and Chess24 bundles, with new deals appearing every day. Visit chess24.com/deals.
Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name that just seems attractive.
Play live online against the world's top chess players while they stream their thoughts live. As a Chess24 Premium member, seize the chance to have your moment of fame. Get a peek inside their lives with question and answer sessions, in-depth teaching, analysis and interviews. The Champions Chess Tour, with countless accompanying events, is happening now. Tune in on Chess24.
So this is the broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation. You can also see the engine evaluation next to each move, and also how long they spend.
What I like is you can make your own moves on the board. You can check the alternatives to what the players did. And even for the moves you make, you get the computer evaluation here.
Fantastic.
I think you get it quicker and better as a premium member, such as yours truly. What I also like, there is a chat function. You can exchange things with people from all over the world. If you want to see something else, let's say you're watching a tournament and you want to see all the games at once, no problem displaying. I have no idea how many games there are, like 128 games at the same time. You can do even more. This is a team competition. You click on multi-board.
That's beautiful.
You can see all the 8 games going on at once.
You can see the games and standings, which I...
What we got? I'll click around. Games and standings, here.
Yeah. Analysis, if we click on that tab, that's
Let's
a nice
click on it.
You can see that it's a great little graphical illustration. The red line is 0, that is the absolute even mark. And if the white bars go up, the further up they go, the bigger the advantage. And the black bars show a black advantage.
Then there is a database, and here we get the alternatives. And if we click on a move in the database, bam, it gets played on the board.
Fantastic. And then the PGN can even be downloaded.
I like that feature.
Yeah.
Whatever tournament or game you're following, you click it and you open it in the program of your choice.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like to see as well is when we get a video from the playing hall. I like to see them in their seats, nervous, you feel the tension, you feel like you're there, don't you?
Chess is really becoming a spectator's internet sport.
Great that we can see that. I also love to see the fact that we can get in some of our friends to join us during the broadcast, and it's all interactive. That's what we love. And
a lot of overview functions there.
A lot of great functions there, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you take advantage of all of them. Let's get back to the commentary.
Keep tweeting us, hashtag C24Live. We love to hear from you. Ask us anything mainly about Lawrence life, but if you have other questions, they're also welcome.
Also send us anything you like about Jan. Hashtag C24Live.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. In just a few moments, we will be lifting off Game 3, but what drama, what action in Game 2 in both these matches. Temur Radjabov, just a stunning display of chess there, with the king marching to a5 and wrapping that game up with the white pieces taking his early lead. Magnus Carlsen wins his game against Wesley So, and what a fantastic game that was. I have to say though, Peter, Ale, that in both these Game 1 and Game 2, we saw Wesley missing some big opening chances. That's not very characteristic of Wesley.
Yeah, but sometimes you have off days. It's just a little bit of details that can change the course of a game when you're playing somebody as strong as Magnus. And missing this detail of knight c5 on the first game, perhaps nobody told him, but it was there and you miss it, you don't get a second one. It's the same in this game. You forget your prep. It was just one move, and perhaps the position is still tenable depending on certain circumstances. But in a rapid time control, in being under pressure, Magnus just showed that he couldn't return to the game. And I think it's a tough psychological blow that you played your prep and you lose with it anyway with white. I want to see how he recovers, but we have action already in the MVL Temur game.
And another Kalashnikov coming up, Peter.
Yeah, exactly. One could have argued that it's kind of a surprise that Radjabov will be repeating it, especially knowing that he won the second game and he's up on the scoreboard. If he managed to make a draw in this game, that basically sets him in a very good position. I mean, we know that Radjabov is super solid, and with the white pieces, he shouldn't run any big problems. But right now, it's Maxim from the white side. We see exactly the very same line. Bishop e3 played, rook c8 happened also in their game. And the big question is, will Maxim again sacrifice his pawn on c4, or will he make sure that he covers that pawn? And look at this, Radjabov is the first to think. I mean, he's also maybe confused, like, what does Maxim have in mind?
What does Maxim have in mind is the question that we've been asking each other as well, Peter. Now, Ale, we see Maxim just blitz out his games, regardless of the position on the board, regardless of what he actually comes out of, often in bad positions. We see him not even taking a breather. He's just playing so fast. Is that something that you've noticed as well in this entire event?
I think it's part of his identity as a chess player. He believes in his openings. He believes in what he does. He doesn't switch out of them. So he needs to show that level of understanding. He needs to show that level of confidence. He can't back out, right? If you only play one defense against e4, and you only play one defense against d4, and you only play e4, you better know them very well to be able to compete against the best in the world. And MVL's knowledge is second to none in so many of these ideas. And he says, look, I've looked at this position. Perhaps it didn't go exactly as planned, but you can see it that he's not afraid to repeat positions, even if he gets bad results. For example, he repeats this Grunfeld position. He makes a slight tweak with the move h5 instead of allowing h5 like he did against Magnus. But he says, look, I'm not afraid to go into it. He might have looked at this with an engine or with the second and said, look, against rook c8, there's a slight little detail. Maybe you can try this. He's not afraid to go for it at any point. It makes him a little bit of a target. It's maybe not a little bit. He's been a consistent target for many preparations. But on the other hand, he's so many so many times he's able to show that understanding. He's able to show that sometimes his prep is better, even though he is a target, and he's just not afraid to blitz those things out. I am very surprised about, however, that Tamer is taking a couple of minutes in this position.
That's actually super insightful. The fact that Maxime has these set lines, he needs to keep the momentum going. He can't give his opponent the chance to believe that he's a little shaken up out of the opening, because after all, he's not wearing them. He goes for his pet openings, he believes in them, and that's what he wants to show confidence in those lines. Rook B8 played right now, and Ali, I also want to talk to you a little bit about Maxime. Now, he is currently leading the candidates, but Vachier-Lagrave was a very difficult tournament for him. We saw him just struggle there. I think so far in this event, it's been stopping the bleeding. You know, he has shown in the preliminaries some great chess, also in the quarterfinals, and even his match against Magnus. What do you think went wrong for him in Vachier-Lagrave?
Well, not a lot of us talk about it, but it's not a normal year, and it doesn't affect everybody the same way. It's not easy to keep up your motivation. It's not easy to have the ability to consistently improve yourself when there are no tournaments, right? And MVL, he simply hasn't played that much. It's possible that he just had an off tournament. It's possible that he wasn't able to train with the same level of motivation going into Vachier-Lagrave. But honestly, as a Fabi fanboy, it really scares me that MVL had a very terrible Vachier-Lagrave. The reason being that this might be his wake-up call. I would much rather, as a Fabi fanboy, although I'm also good friends with MVL, that Maxime had a terrible candidates, right? The second half. But what's going to happen? There's a crucial game going into the candidates, Fabi versus MVL, very first game to be when the tournament resumes. And that's going to be a huge one, right? Basically a must-win game for Fabi with the white pieces. Can he do it, or is MVL going to wake up? Did the sleeping dragon wake up because of Vachier-Lagrave? And that's the question that I want answered going into the candidates. Vachier-Lagrave, it's a strong tournament and everything, incredibly important, especially with the lack of other events. But did we just wake up MVL?
Wow. So was Vaik a wake-up call for MVL? And like you pointed out, when Fabi does take on Maxime, Fabi is currently trailing, I think, by a point to Maxime. So actually, by winning, he could catch up. So very, very important and a crucial game.
Catch and pass him, because he would have the better tie breaks.
Absolutely. So that shot, because candidates is really, there's nothing more than just winning it. It doesn't matter if you finish second or last in it. It is just all about winning it and booking your spot for the World Championship match. Now, Ali, you're a very good friend of Fabi. You also work with him. You worked with him in the World Championship 2018 match, and you still do. I want to ask you, we don't see him play these online events as much. We haven't seen him here that often. Is that, why is that? Is that part of the strategy for the candidates? Can you give us some insights on that?
Well, that would have to be a direct question to Fabi himself. I know that he likes online events, but he's not a big of a fan of online events as he is of regular chess. It just might be that, you know, his focus is for the main goal, and it's to take out Magnus Carlsen, not in any event, but in the World Championship match.
Well, currently, we've got Wesley so taking on Magnus, and I see a Berlin.
Yeah, this is a very bad news for all of us. I mean, including Wesley, because basically Magnus just uses this strategy of shutting the game down. He has won with the black pieces. He doesn't mind the draw, and I think the game will be drawn in like less than 2 minutes, because this we have seen in already hundreds of top-level games when the players want to make sure that they're gonna end up in this pawn endgame, I believe, which we have already seen for the very first time in the match between Magnus Carlsen and Vishy Anand in Chennai, when already Magnus didn't mind the draw. I mean, this is not going to be a game.
Yeah, I can't imagine that this will end in anything but a draw. It's a very typical Wesley thing to do too. He wants to not push too hard, not go all out in the next game. Look at this repetition they found. And he just likes stabilizing the next game, saying, look, I'm going to be white in the next. After that, let me just make a draw, clear my mind, and let's go for the next one. I think a lot of players would take a different approach, and they think, okay, there's only 2 games left. Let's try to make it murky with the black side. At least give me a chance in not only 1 game, but in 2. But Wesley's not that type of player. He shuts down this game. Magnus is happy to take the draw with the current lead, and it's all going to come down to game 4.
He's got to win on demand. Otherwise, I mean, draw or losing is the same result. So he's just going to throw the kitchen sink at Magnus, I think, in that one. And I think it makes sense. You know, you've had a tough game. You lost with the white pieces in that game. You want to stop the bleeding. You want to calm yourself down. The format is just so demanding. There's barely any time. So you say, I'm going to take it easy for this one. And with the white pieces, try everything that I've got. All right, so very critical game 4 coming up. Peter, let's switch to our other match because action's still on in that because Maxime is playing with the white pieces and he's the one who's trailing. So he's going to go for everything that he can with this position. What are the ideas? White's made the move shot castle. Is black going to try and get b5 at some point? It's not possible right now because white can just pick up the pawn.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, black is trying to play b5. However, right now after b5, cb5, ab5, bishop b5 is just in time to hit the knight on c6. So black will not have the typical idea of knight takes e4, using the fact that if white captures on e4, then the bishop on b5 is hanging because white can simply capture on c6. And the big question is, if you don't have b5, before in the previous game, they had been debating rook c8, and then black was relying on the fact that after knight a5 hitting the pawn, b3, b5 was coming very quickly and white had to sacrifice the pawn. He got a nice positional compensation, but we don't know exactly what the players thought exactly about the position. In any case, Radjabov sidestepped the Maxim preparation with Maxim is very happy about it because after rook b8 castles, it's all these direct issues with knight a8. And look at this, Teimur goes for queen d7. I mean, clear indication that yes, now he's probably planning some b5, but now Maxim will not let this happen anymore. I mean, I can imagine even a move like a4, you know, a4, and if black plays knight a5, which looks like the reaction, then I might just come back with the knight using the position. I'm protecting the pawn to active. Yeah, and after rook f8, I'm just gonna play b3, and you know what? Yes, I know I have an ugly knight on a3, but what do you have on with the knight on a5? I cemented my position. Give me some more move. I'm gonna get f3 in, slowly get my rooks into the game, and black is doomed to passivity. But in b5 after white strengthened his pawn on e4. But now can black actually try? That was the reason why I wanted to play with a4.
And I think you kind of have to. When I put the queen on d7 in this kind of structures, I'm basically saying b5 has to work, right? Because the other idea sometimes is to go knight d7, f5. But I like your move a4, honestly. Black himself disallowed f5 ideas. Why not just cement this queen side out of space? Where are your breaks?
Exactly. I think if white would go a4, the break, perhaps black can try and move the knight away to e8 and dream of getting.
Yeah, but I'm usually very happy if black plays f5. I mean, f5 is usually good if white is. I mean, knight d7 with some idea also to d5 makes more sense. Besides, also the queen on d8 is then very nicely supporting some bishop g5. Black will have bishop g5, but very available.
All right, but he decides to go f3, and now there's this dilemma because now black can immediately break with b5. After knight a5, he is hitting the pawn on c4. So firstly, how is white defending? Is knight a3 a move? It looks very ugly, but at least it defends c4 and stops b5 for the...
But if I keep asking questions, I put something on c8, let's say rook f c8, right?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to have my pawn on a4 before I put knight on a3, because then I'm making sure that b5 will never work. Somewhere wants to use the knight d5 idea for pawn. He's relying on some knight d5. It could be a possibility, and the bishop gets trapped on e6. White is trapped d5, and the knight on a5 will also feel stupid. So
yeah, moment that we've been seeing Maxime do throughout the event, just very quickly plays f3 and they try and get a successful break, and white tries to fight that. But this very quick f3, black with the tempo, threatening b5, and he's gone b3. So clearly allowing this very, very important strategic break with b5 makes me wonder if
It's strange, right, to go f3 and b3 and allow b5 when you had some tools that Teimur doesn't hesitate. He says, thank you very much. This is my only strategical chance. Yes, it's true. There's a powerful knight on b4. I have my weakness on d5, but he had to get this b5 break in to have any shot at activity.
These ideas, I mean, yeah, it's wonderful usually, and also knight c6, but bishop d8, bishop b6 looked quite tempting actually just before going for this knight c6, but I see that the engine bar doesn't like this move knight c6. Yeah, it something.
I was just gonna say, because the engine bar doesn't like black's position. Knight c6, I don't think the b5 pawn is hanging. Bishop b5 can be met by rook b5 and knight b5. There's knight takes b4. So what is it that the engine doesn't like about black's position?
That's the question, right? Knight a6, you were thanks to the tension between the knights, but now I'm hitting your rook. I'm going to take on b5 with the bishop, which defends the knight on a6 in case that you play rook a8. And there's not that many other options, right? Rook b7 could be an option, but I'll still take on b5 because that is a defended bishop.
Is that possible? So rook b7, bishop b5, rook b5, knight b5, queen b7. Are you going knight c7 there?
Yes.
Yeah, luckily I have this knight a7. I'm not entirely sure it was our intention, but definitely Maxim has probably foreseen it. I mean, very, very nice, because the knight on b5 is going to be strengthened with a4, so the knights will be freed pretty quick.
And you don't have time to go bishop d8 because there's knight e6 as queen d6 as well as possible. So there's no way for black to keep the pressure going. And after a4, like you pointed out, everything gets consolidated. So knight a6 is actually a big question to Raja. How is he? Does he just lose the b5 pawn now?
No, he has to play for some kind of compensation, right? I assume you move the rook and go something like d5 when possible, but I don't know how to make it work. There's also problems with the c5 square.
Yeah, the big question is exactly where do we put this rook, because every square has its own drawbacks, and especially in a rapid game this is very annoying, because now if he spends a lot of time figuring out where do I put the rooks in order to be able to, I don't know, break with d5, then again all these knight c5 jumps are in the position. You might feel that maybe black would love to remove the queen with queen b7 and threatening the knight on a6, but white probably simply strengthens the position. But still, maybe this is somewhat of an awkward situation for white, and black can try to use something with something like knight d4 could be a jump here. So maybe even queen d3 should have been the move. At least here we feel some disbalance in white's pieces as well.
Yeah, I kind of like the ability for the queen to go somewhere active and not be pinned. So rook a8 for now seems more natural to me.
Yeah, so how do we react? I mean, do we go queen d3?
It has to be queen e2, queen d3 are the only two moves. No, knight doesn't have a way back, and there is just no other way to defend. Rook a6. And rook a8 played, like you pointed out, it's the more natural way, because you want to step out of this pin along the a4, e8 diagonal. You want that queen on b7. Peter, why would you pick d3 over e2? Is there a particular reason for that?
Yeah, because of this knight d4 business. Yeah, I mean, queen e2, that was, my mouse automatically, my hand moved the queen to e2. It was so natural, but suddenly I saw that knight d4 is really annoying. And that's how I came up with that. Okay, then I have to put the queen.
Is that annoying though? If I just take on d4 and go knight d5 and say, okay, you got a pawn back, but your structure's kind of ruined. I'm going to get a rook on c1. I don't know. It might be a little bit too fantastical.
But maybe I can capture with the bishop, no? And get the knight. I mean, knight takes d5 and then my knight is jumping.
Yeah, the knight jumps are annoying. I was somehow, again, automatically I took with the knight because pair of bishops. But yes, as soon as I saw a knight landing on d5, this is not really playable.
Yeah, and queen b7 on the board. Yeah, I mean, black has to go for it. We do see the engine bar saying that, no, don't, guys, just don't panic. I mean, white is a healthy pawn up. No worries, but still in a rapid game, I feel like, black has now some ideas like rook fd8. The big question is, however, that when you go queen d3, you might be threatening bishop takes c6, queen takes c6, and knight b4 back with a very, very fast tempo and getting the d5 square under control. I mean, that's actually one of the things that I'm really worried from the black side, that I have to watch out for bishop takes c6 as well after queen d3. Because right now I cannot take on c6 immediately because suddenly both my knights are hanging. But once the knight is protected, that's another benefit of putting the queen on d3. White might be threatening to stabilize like this.
So queen d3, maybe rook fc8, right?
Yeah,
just to avoid your idea.
On the board. Yeah, so where do we go? Yeah, probably because you have to stop bishop c6, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Rook fc8. But now you are not threatening at d5, yeah? That's kind of the... I might also be able maybe to play some knight d5 somewhere, but I don't want to do it yet. Don't know exactly why, but somehow my hand is not making this move.
No, I can't see why. But on the other hand, also, I don't see like black's continuation after a move like rook f(c1), just saying, I'm going to bring one more piece into the position. What's your threat?
Exactly. I mean, because black is also kind of packed with all these pieces, and without any timely d5, I don't see black really creating the dynamic that he needs to justify. Is maybe somewhere some knight d4 jump anyway a possibility? For example, here, after all, after queen d3, can I jump knight d4?
I don't see anything tactically wrong with it. I could take and go knight e2 and still kind of wonder,
exactly,
do you have enough?
Yeah. But I feel like, you know, I don't know yet what, but maybe now some knight d7 jump, trying to use the fact that white's pieces are a little loose. Yeah, I mean, I feel that dark squares are there. Maybe knight d7 is possible. However, I don't see yet the refutation of knight takes d4, but just feels that maybe some tactics might be there.
Well, knight d4, knight e5. Maybe somehow I can make this work for black. I still don't see how. Everything's a little bit too slow, right? Queen b6, you defend the knight.
Yeah, but still, I mean, it feels a bit shaky, yeah?
Yes, it does. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah, but now you are already threatening to come back with the knight to b4. Yeah, so even, I mean, bishop c8 doesn't work. All right, it's Timur's job to find out. I mean, it's not an easy, I mean, we are not spotting it yet. Certainly, black is looking for some confusion. Look at this, Timur down to 4 minutes.
Yeah, that's the problem. He realizes that he is currently in a critical position. He needs to find that counterplay. He needs to find that trick or that tactic that will allow him to embarrass white's position. He goes for the move, rook f(c8). We had mentioned this position, but we had also asked ourselves, like, if you just developed white's rook to c1, what did black gain with this rook f(c8)? And he's spending this much time because every single move will be crucial for him. He's down a pawn. He needs to prove that compensation. Any endgame is going to be automatically lost. And it's just going to be a couple of moves away for white to consolidate his position fully.
So he needs to prove it fast. And we do see Magnus Carlsen, Wesley so have taken their seats for their fourth game. Currently, Magnus Carlsen leads the set. Wesley has to win on demand to equalize the match. The big question is, are we going to see a repeat of the Italian?
Well, look at this. Wesley definitely has put his pawn on e4 already. I mean, Magnus have not answered it yet. Wesley's intentions are clear. I'm probably ready.
Peter, maybe a Sicilian. Oh, he goes e5.
No Sicilian. And I think Magnus gonna play bishop c5.
So no knight f6 craziness, none of that, because we did see that he missed that opportunity, Wesley, in that absolutely wild game. This one also being blitzed out.
Yeah, this kind of, we were already told that Wesley also covered this in his course. This is his main variation. And which game was it in Vaikanzi? I think it was Niels Grandelius against Arjan Tari. Yeah, that was the game that we covered in Tata Steel Masters. And there we already got some highlights, you know, how deep Wesley's preparation was going. Let's see what Magnus has in store for us here. This is the tabia of this whole variation. I mean, basically, a few years ago, this line did not really exist, but like in 2016, it became very popular. The main point, I think, being that it's very important for white to include h3, because if you start with queen c2, then black goes bishop f5, and after queen b3, if I'm remembering correctly, black has the very nice knight a5 move, and after queen takes d5, sidesteps with the queen to e7, and we see the difference that all of a sudden, black is threatening to trap white's queen on d5. I mean, if you take knight e4, black goes rook d8, and you have all these problems with the queen. But with this h3 moves included, h3, bishop h5, queen c2, bishop g6, white can play queen b3. And now if black jumps with knight a5, then it's a whole different story, because the d7 square is available for white's queen. You cannot play like this. So Magnus goes for knight e7, castles c6, bishop d3, knight f5. This was the line that was debated like in 2016, and white was posing some kind of questions. Very interesting to see where is the real development. I mean, really.
What happened? Something happened. Why is Wesley smiling and at the same time slightly in shock? Did he miss something?
Did he mix something, or is it? No, this is his main move. Yeah. No, probably he is smiling that he's again tested in his chessable course, and he definitely has done some brilliant analysis. The question is, will he remember them? Yeah, that's the big question now that we are asking, because the previous game was such a shock.
Well, luckily, it's not such a razor-sharp position, right? If he makes a mistake, doesn't exactly remember his line, I think, okay, he might not be better, but he's not going to be instantly in trouble the way that he was in the previous game. Such a fascinating position, though. Magnus thinking of through the move Queen C2. Lots of things hanging, a lot of tension in the center, but how do you solve them here with the black side? Do you even consider taking on E3?
Yeah, I think one thing we should mention, that the more frequent move after bishop d3, knight d2, this was the very first reaction of black when white started playing this variation, and then after knight takes d2, bishop takes d3 leads to this type of positions, which was very difficult to assess, because black gains this very powerful light square bishops, but in fact computer was somehow supporting white's side, and black was kind of struggling. And Magnus goes for knight f5, queen c2, and the big question is how much terror is here, and who will be the better prepared player now?
These positions, they always seemed a little bit unpleasant for black to play, but on the other hand, it was this weakness of the c3 pawn that always seemed to give black just enough counterplay. You install a bishop on a5, say, how are you going to defend this pawn on c3? It's awkward to do it with a rook. You'd rather have the queen doing something else than sitting on d3 in many cases. And c4, which he does play in this position, yes, you get rid of the pawn, but remember, it's a bishop against the knight. The more of these pawns disappear, the less this knight is going to be able to do against the bishop.
Yeah, and he goes c4. I mean, what does it mean? And we are getting some information from Sotiris that, okay, so this wasn't exactly Wesley's main line. I mean, Magnus deviated from Wesley's main line, which was capturing on e3 and going knight g3. That was apparently the main line of Wesley. I mean, this taking on c3, taking on e3, one really has this feeling like maybe white can be simply little bit better, but on the other hand, black has a super solid position. So in this regard, I'm liking Magnus's choice, because I mean, the chances of really getting a very solid, stable position, which would suit him perfectly fine, is very, very likely here.
Getting a solid position is not Wesley's idea, so we have to look for ways how Wesley's going to try to fight for an advantage. He's made the move c4. The first question is, how does black react? I think if black was to take on e5, knight e5, that would be a dream scenario for white. So how is black reacting? Is he taking on c4? Is he falling back with the bishop to c7, or does he capture on e5 first? These are the three moves that come to my mind. Ale, Peter, what is the way for black to go here?
So many options. I would even consider the move c5. I'm just afraid it doesn't tactically work. But sometimes when these pawns disappear, even if you lose a pawn, the dark squares that remain are so weak for the white side that sometimes it doesn't matter. But I assume that because c4 was mentioned, that the engine doesn't kind of approve of such a position. On the other hand, f takes e5, knight takes e5, and just retreating the bishop to c7, immediately asking a question of this knight. Is it playable? I'm a little bit scared of rook takes f8 and something like rook f1. So if Magnus doesn't know what he's doing, I'm certainly sure that he's going to be looking at variations like this.
Yeah, this looks like it could be a little bit of a trouble here, no? Like asking these questions, where are you going to move with the queen? Queen e7, there might be even rook f7 coming in. Suddenly it looks like murky waters if you get into this line.
Sometimes it's very tempo dependent, right? Because if you don't want to go queen e7 and allow something like rook f7, but if I go queen e8, it's not pretty, but I am taking on e5 and asking direct questions, right? How are you going to actually continue the attack? Not something I am thrilled of playing, but what is the follow-up here for white? Do you go something like queen f5 and hope that your double pawn structure doesn't really matter? It's not such an easy question to answer, I think.
Yeah,
also, let's take a look
definitely
at the c5 move that you mentioned, Peter, because that was a very interesting idea as well.
Well, actually, my intention was here, you know, that what happens if I just take on c4 and after queen c4 play the move queen d5? I mean, I'm not thrilled that I'm going to have a weakness on d5. On the other hand, you know, it's a very tempting possibility of I only need a draw and I can liquidate immediately, and I'm gonna take on e5, and without the queens, it doesn't look that scary. But still, the pawn on d5 in long terms, because white has this d4 e3 pawn structure, maybe the knight will be finally landing on f4, putting pressure on the d5 pawn. So it's not a completely stable equal position, and I understand Magnus actually going for the bishop c7 move, making sure that, okay, I'm gonna put the pressure on the e5 pawn. If you have to play cd5, then do I get time to take with the queen? But that runs into e4. That's actually very important. Queen d5
and
can be
d5 played.
Yes, cd5 played, and now white has e4, and the black queen doesn't have a good square, because if you retreat to d7, white will have queen b3 check, followed by e6. If you go queen e6, it runs into d5. But what? Magnus goes queen d5. What are we missing, or what am I missing after e4?
Nothing, because the engine bar seems to confirm exactly what you're saying, that white has got this opportunity now. E4 looks like a forcing move, Peter. Let's try and find out, where can black's queen move? Queen f7 looks very ugly, because you come into this f-file pin, all kinds of jumps with knight g5, or taking on f6 and then jumping with the knight. Where is the queen going after e4? Is queen b5 an option? But then that just looks like a bad pawn structure, even if you trade the queens.
But actually you have queen e6, and after d5, cd, ed, you have queen b6 check. I mean, that might be a big saver. In this regard, if I could somehow include rook a b1 and then go for the same ideas, it would be brutally strong. I don't know exactly. I mean, one really needs to calculate, but the position looks very scary.
Yeah, but e4, queen e6, if you put the rook on b1, maybe I can start considering just going bishop b6. Now that there's no pawn on e3, I can start targeting that pawn on d4, saying, look, that's a weak pawn. I have my counterplay, my bishop is part of the game. And tactically, how do I solve this problem of e4, queen e6? I'm having a little bit of trouble understanding where white's advantage is. I see the engine bar, so I know it's got to be there somewhere. I just don't see it right now. Maybe you just take on f6 and continue pushing the pawn. It's a little loose, though.
Yeah, maybe just take on f6.
And if rook f6?
Well, if rook f6, there will be all kinds of e5, knight g5 ideas. I don't know in which order, because I can also start with knight g5 immediately. I mean, it looks very scary, because I have this queen b3 check coming up.
Yeah, I would be surprised it's not lost, actually.
Yeah.
So after e takes f6, does he have to take back with the queen?
Yeah, but then I also have some queen. Okay, queen b3 check, you have queen f7 trick. Yeah.
That's a nice trick. Maybe you can point
f6 immediately. I mean, okay. His point is that if you take rook f7, I mean, rook takes f6, he wants to kind of have the same ideas with e4. Wow.
This looks very scary for black.
Yeah, let's just very quickly show this line that after e f6, queen f6, the justification of this move is that if white plays queen b3, then all of a sudden black has this very nice queen f7 move, because queen takes b7 runs into bishop h2 check, winning the queen. And thanks to this trick, black seems to be stabilizing. Okay, of course, white doesn't have to fall for the trick, but if you play e5, then black will have all kinds of queen e7 or queen f5, whatever moves, which already look quite solid. So that's why probably Wesley starts with ef6.
And the fact that Magnus is thinking in this position really indicates how dangerous rook f6, e4 is. Because otherwise you kind of play it immediately, right? You gain your pawn and you keep your structure. GF looks almost so ugly because at some point this knight will land on f5 and you're going to cry. But what else could he be thinking about? Is he going to sacrifice his pawn? What other alternatives are here?
Yeah, look at his camera. I mean, he's holding his head with his hand. You know, typically a sign of Magnus when he is somehow not happy of what had happened.
I have to agree with you, and this really looks like Wesley's chance here. All right, so ef6. Black doesn't have moves like queen d6 because fg7, rook f3 leads to nothing. There's no checkmate along the diagonal. So queen d6 is not a possibility to try and do something with the attack. You just simply grab the rook and your king escapes. So if that move is out of the question, Black has to recapture on f6. I do not believe that there's a pawn sacrifice that he can be looking at holding this position with. Rook e8. And
I was wondering how bad rook e8 is, really. I mean, you get control of the e4 square. It looks super shaky, but maybe he's in desperation mode.
No?
Yeah, it's clear that you don't want to do it, especially because probably white has knight h4 and white is in time to get to the f5 square. And then also any kind of tricks from black side doesn't seem to work. But Okay, even here, the queen d6 is still very sharp, yeah, because knight f5, I mean, here already this exchange sacrifice, I'm not entirely sure. I have this queen g3 check. The line might continue, but you might be just in time to escape.
But what's wrong with king f1?
Rook f2.
King f1 as well, yeah. Okay, rook takes e3, but I mean, okay, if anyway, it's good for white.
He goes
And
for
Magnus goes gf6. Oh my God, I mean, okay, like Alejandro said, yeah, this knight h4, knight f5 idea is coming. I mean, it's almost strategically, it's definitely a disaster for black.
So knight h4, there's still queen d6, or is that met by rook f4 and you say you don't really care and your knight is coming to f5 anyway?
Yeah, also even rook f3 covering the g3 square and queen h2 check does nothing because...
Yeah, as they say, it's just a check, right? This knight on f5 is permanent.
Wow. I mean, incredible, yeah?
Trouble here.
Incredible. Best
all right, knight h4
chances.
Peter, is there an option to try and go king h8 and be the first one to get your rook to g8? But then I see knight f5, e4 just looks so bad for black. Knight f5, rook g8, you're threatening mate, but e4 just keeps everything under control. You don't even have queen d6 anymore.
Yeah. That's the problem. The knight on f5 is so powerful. It's on a light square. It's controlling all of the weak dark squares that have been left behind because of the move h3, and that gives me the confidence to advance in the center with moves like e4. I don't need to rush this attack of the f6 square. It's about controlling black's pieces, pushing my pawns, putting my king in safety. We always analyze these variations in which the king on g1 is being threatened. But as you mentioned, with the knight installed on f5, how do you even create a threat? Magnus needs to keep some kind of dynamic compensation for having a knight on f5. Wesley actually starts with the move e4. I was looking at that, but I didn't like it as much because if I just move queen t6, I mean, I immediately threatening, well, I'm not threatening queen h2, but the idea is that the knight on f3 is kind of stuck. I don't know if there's a problem here with maybe queen b3, queen takes b7. I'm not a huge fan of the move e4. I like putting my knight on f5. First order of business.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's some kind of a big shock for me as well that Wesley did not start with knight h4. On the other hand, now after queen d7, he's in time apparently. No, he can go knight h4 and he will be in time to get his knight to f5 anyway.
I think queen d7 can be explained that by the fact that probably Magnus did not like sacrificing that b7 pawn. This is a trick that Peter, you've pointed out earlier, that now queen b3 doesn't work after the queen is on d7. Queen d6, he could have picked up the pawn, although still this looked like the way to go because you've kind of created your play. Queen b7, bishop b6 could come in, the rook is coming to g8, the other rook is coming to either b8 or e8.
I would even started with rook g8. I'm threatening rook g2.
Absolutely, rook g8 and big threat, rook g2, queen g3 coming in and checkmating. This is, I'm quite surprised that Magnus decided to go with queen d7, defending that b7 pawn, but allowing knight h4. The key point pointed out by Ale, after queen d6, the knight on f3 is just completely stuck. It needs to defend the h2 square, and it would not have been allowed to jump to f5. But queen d7, this is a return gift for Wesley's e4.
Yeah, absolutely. And also look at the situation. I mean, the players are really tensed. Wesley has still a lot of time on the clock. I mean, there was just no reason to make up his mind with e4 so quickly. And in return, you know, it's such an important strategical moment because if white gets the knight to f5, actually it doesn't really matter how much time Magnus has on the clock. It's going to be, in long terms, game over. I mean, I don't really believe you can believe that you're going to hold it. And in this regard, good or bad, the queen d6 was giving you chances because if white really goes hunting this pawn and gives black the initiative, I mean, we are talking about a rapid game, yeah, all these emotions and everything. I mean, whenever you get a counterplay, I think that's what you really need. But if white ends up with putting the knight on f5, I mean, if white really gets in time to get there, then basically, I mean, how are you going to survive? You're never really able to break with c5. It doesn't give you anything. I mean, I don't know. I'm really surprised and shocked by Magnus blitzing out queen d7.
I'm shocked as well. And there was maybe some idea. I keep being shocked by these moves. Put the knight on f5. It's just begging to be played. I didn't see any tactical problems because the move knight h4, bishop b6, knight f5, c5, perhaps with the idea that you don't have d5 in that position, could still be met with something like queen c4 check and then go d5, blocking this bishop out of the action. And now rook a d1, there's rook a d8. Put a knight on f5, Wesley, come on.
He can still go knight h4. Probably after knight h4, what was our line for queen d6? So if, let's take a look at this position. So knight h4, if black then goes queen d6, you play rook f3 because there's no more rook f4 and everything is still under control. But wait a second, there's queen h2, king f2, rook d4.
Yeah, queen b3 check.
Is rook d4?
Queen b3.
Oh, that's annoying.
Yeah.
Still it continues actually, but it should work for me. Yeah, king h8 takes bishop b6, and I will have knight f3 protecting everything. Yeah, even I can move the rook, and I'm gonna come back with the knight.
Queen f4, knight f3.
Yeah. Okay. There's still gonna be some c5, but okay. I mean, somewhere the line has to end, and it should not work for black.
Yeah, because c5 I can always play rook c4, right?
Finally, knight h4, king h8 on the board.
All right, so we are relieved. At least we're gonna see Magnus just goes king h8. Okay, if black had to play king h8, then definitely knight h4 was perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the knight comes to f5. I assume you'll play something like rook g8, but black has some pressure, some ideas. He's not completely out of the water, completely dead, but the position looks so dominant for white with this knight.
Absolutely.
But maybe still not so easy. I mean, what's next? You've got this beautiful knight on f5. Let's say black makes the natural looking move, rook to g8. We do have another update. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has leveled his score in his match against Temur Radjabov with a win. Peter, let's take a quick look at that.
Yeah, I mean, this guy Maxim is amazing. I mean, he's such a fighter. I mean, we have seen it against Magnus Carlsen as well, that he's bouncing back. And this is the moment after rook f8, he played the move a4. He just wanted to make sure that, you know what, I'm going to give back the b3 pawn. Please take it. I just want to stabilize my position because after all, I have all the trumps in the position. Radjabov was trying to fight, but I mean, the position looks like white has this lovely pawn on a4, which gives the b5 square. White's knights are beautifully eyeing the d5 weakness, so black would only solve his problems by pushing d6, d5, which doesn't seem to be possible. And then black is doomed without counterplay.
And down a piece on the queen side.
Yeah, and look at this h4 move. I mean, definitely a stunning move because he just creates weakness on the king side all of a sudden. So he even sacrifices the pawn, but he sees that this powerful knight on d5 plus in combination of destroying black's king side, rook coming with tempo to b1 and queen a6, queen h4 was already game over because white is coming with queen d8 check, white is coming with some rook b8 with knight e7 checks, and there is just no way with black to defend against all these threats. All the work is done by the knight on d5.
Beautiful.
Yes, stunning. I mean, sometimes it's so easy to win games, yeah, and sometimes you try everything and nothing works. It's just incredible.
Actually, both these games and these matches have been just absolutely brilliant. I mean, the one that Raja also won with that king on a5, and then this brilliant show by Maxime. Just when you feel he's had a bad game, he comes back. He has been the comeback kid in this entire event, in the semifinal, especially against Magnus. He continues the trend, and that match is a level now. All right, Peter, so back to this one, and I see that there have been some structural changes. So Magnus went for c5.
Yeah, Magnus is trying to create himself the counterplay because, okay, if he just sits tight, it will not work out. So basically he's trying to activate his bishop. Now he also has ideas like b5, c4, creating threats. So I think one of the key questions will be that when is the right time for white to push d6? Because it would be lovely to get d6 and then move the queen away, get the rook to d5, pressure the black's queen side pawns, pressure also the bishop on e5, that maybe somewhere you can have an exchange sacrifice, destroying and some with mating threats. I mean, lot of questions here, but definitely Magnus had to do it. Besides, white even has the slow option of stopping black from going b5. That's actually maybe the more professional option, just stop his counterplay and then rely on the fact that you anyway have the long-term benefits.
I like the move rook b1. It puts that question on how you want to progress with black. Even the move like a6 that you want to make so you can play b5 runs into the issue of like b6 is weak. You're opening lines against your b7 square. Maybe here Magnus has to calculate if I have something like bishop c7, but allowing this rook to b6 is very counterintuitive. And if you don't have the move a6, where is black's plan? You need to push his pawns on the queen side to create that counterplay.
Yeah, I don't know what to. I mean, somehow he needs to create something, but a6, rook b6, yeah, rook b1 on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. It's just when you know you're dominating the position, you just use the strategy of not allowing your opponent's play. You ask, what is your opponent's idea? And then you just stop it. And he says, he continues with the idea of b6. All right, so what is the point? Where is the play after b6? What does he want to do? Queen
yeah,
C4.
white goes queen c4. White's intention is clear that slowly he's going to prepare a4, a5, breaking this structure. I mean, this structure will not hold on forever. And then I wonder if Magnus' chances to try to use the time and create something on the king side. But I mean, with this knight on f5, it doesn't seem to be so easy. He also needs to maybe somewhere with this rook g8 check, try to insist on some tactical trick with a timely bishop d4 check, but the bishop d4 moved down. Rook f8 and like
Running bishop d4.
Fine. Yeah.
I was actually thinking he would do the other rook. It's funny how these grandmasters work because I see an open g file and I'm immediately drawn to it, but Magnus thinks, look, the g file is not useful for me at all. I need to pressure these central pawns so they don't just roll over me. He starts with the move rook e8, immediately king h1, sidestepping this bishop d4 check trick. Of course, the point being that knight takes d4, rook takes e4 would have given black a fine position. And it keeps asking questions from black. How are you got a threat, I defend. How are you improving?
That's actually a very interesting point. The fact that the f8 rook, you feel like it belongs on the g file and you want to bring this rook on d8, which isn't really doing anything because the d5 pawn is defended. A lot of us would think that you want this rook on e8, the other rook on g8. Magnus immediately goes for rook e8. And I really like Wesley's strategy. He's not trying to do anything right now, but just stopping all of black's tricks. King h1, sidestepping the idea of bishop d4. Maybe we can demonstrate the problem with that, Peter. Let's just back up from king g1. And if white would have continued with the idea of a4, trying to play on both sides of the board, because he does have a dominating position, knight d4, and the point is that after knight d4, it runs into rook takes e4, and that's a pain, and that was the little trick. White decides to go king h1, and there's no more bishop d4.
Just one remark that if the rook would have been the other rook, then white would have queen b5. Maybe. That's like a small little tactical justification, but maybe anyway intuitively Magnus feels like I don't want to create anything on the g5 because that's more like, you know, chasing ghosts. There is nothing for me to grab on the g5, but the rook on d8 might still come handy on the queen side or covering the d pawn.
Magnus doesn't care. He says he's going for bishop d4 anyway. So knight d4, there's still rook e4, so defends it with rook f4, attacking the bishop now. And the question is, what was the point of playing bishop d4 then?
Yeah,
but also the ancient power.
Can he try to sacrifice the exchange? And it would be again one of these lines that he's using. Yeah, and he goes for it.
Immediately, yes.
Peter loves it. Peter loves it. He loves to see an exchange sacrifice.
Well, if I see the knight eliminated from f5, I'm very happy. I mean, okay, I cannot tolerate this this knight on f5 for too long.
It at least changes the game in a way that Magnus can play easier. You eliminate this knight, this bishop on d4 is powerful. Perhaps it doesn't solve all of your problems, but suddenly you've eliminated an important pawn in the center. You probably eliminate the other one. I don't see how you hold on to this pawn on d5.
And white actually try and hold on with a move like rook be1, saying that if you take on d5, there are all these threats with rook e8 check, but does it come to anything?
It's scary.
And then rook e7 and queen d3 next.
Yes, queen d3 or queen c1, depending where the king goes, looks like you will get mated.
Yeah, this one looks like a checkmate. So maybe after rook e1, I cannot capture on d5. But then what do? I mean, I do have bishop e5 if I'm very concerned, but it wasn't exactly the plan. But okay.
Maybe it was.
Yeah. I mean, at least not our first intention. Yeah, when we saw the exchange sacrifice, I felt like, I'm gonna hit the d5 pawn. But yeah, this bishop e5 is kind of nice because the pawn on d5 is isolated. White's king on h1 is slightly vulnerable on the dark squares. Yeah, rook b1 on the board.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to go for this very dangerous queen d5. I think bishop e5 makes a lot of sense. And I have to say that this could be the best position that Magnus has had, especially after white got that knight to f5, sacrificing the exchange.
I agree. It's not so much that white's not better still. Probably white is still much better, but practically speaking, it's a little bit easier to play without this knight on f5 breathing on the entirety of your position. He has the ability right now to create some ideas. The bishop on e5 is nicely placed, and there is no danger of this pawn on e4 rolling with the pawn on the on d5. Pawn on d5 is going to be vulnerable. It's going to need some defense. There's no direct attack on the king. I don't think I can take it immediately, but it's going to be a permanent question, right? How does white make progress while still defending this weakness on d5 for the rest of the game?
Yeah, one question. How crazy is rook takes d5? Is there a checkmate, or there is no reason to give checkmate? It's just good for white. But I wonder.
But it is checkmate, right?
How?
Check and king g7, rook e7. How do you defend? Oh, you go king h6,
I go to h6,
queen c1, queen g5, right?
And queen g5. Yeah, exactly. I would love to get some endgame with this nice bishop on d4.
It looks so scary.
Looks terrifying. Is there?
Yeah, but the position is already bad. I mean, okay, I'm trying to hang on. Yeah.
I will be very surprised if Magnus takes on d5. It's just so courageous. All right, let's see if there's actually something that white can do. Let's back up a little bit.
Yes.
So rook d5.
I mean, there are also some silent moves like rook g4, quite annoying because.
Go back with the rook, no?
I mean, then you go queen f7. Yeah, Magnus goes rook g5. I think rook g4 might win.
Engine bar shoots right up and goes completely crazy. Why?
Yeah, maybe.
But it is a good question. What happens against rook g4?
Yeah, maybe this rook g4 is there a defense because the rook on d5 is kind of stuck with this.
I thought rook d8 here.
Rook d8, queen f7 though.
Oh.
Yeah, rook d8, queen f7. It's over. Strong. Yeah.
And queen d7. There's rook g8.
Yeah, that's over.
Yeah.
Or I could also just take and go rook e8 mate.
That's even prettier and better and stronger.
Yeah, actually, rook g4 might just win. I don't see because rook on d5 is trapped now.
Is Wesley going to find it?
It's not a hard move, but maybe you can try h5 here for black. I'm just throwing moves out there now.
Some queen c1 ideas as well, no? I felt like...
Yeah, I could even throw the checks in first, right? It's not like black's going to be throwing anything anytime soon.
Yeah.
I think it just wins. Rook e8, king h7, rook e7. And then
yeah, it's over.
It's over. I don't see a defense.
Rook e8 check is so tempting because it's a check, but this rook g4 quiet move that you pointed out, Peter, it just... All right, let's see if there's actually a defense after rook g4. So h5 doesn't work. Rook d8 doesn't work. You're threatening rook e8. Queen d7 is also queen d5, and then you go rook e8.
And I mean, rook e5, queen g8, or rook g8 and bishop e5 is met by queen takes d5. Suddenly, all of black's pieces are overloaded.
No, I think it's just done. It's not even a very difficult calculation. Maybe he completely missed the idea of rook g4 because when you see it, it looks crushing. And it's not like his position was falling apart, right? He had to move bishop e5, which still kept him in the game.
Queen d7, queen d5, and rook e8. This tactic that you pointed out in the other line just works here as well, Ale.
Yeah.
Yep.
Amazing. You know, we were just talking about rook d5, and now it just comes down to Wesley if he's able to find this, because I don't know what's going to happen now.
Yeah, and rook by the way, I think Sotir is confirmed that rook g4 just wins. Yeah.
But he's also saying that rook g4 wins. Rook e8 is also really strong. Both players, Wesley so just completely focused. He can feel that there's something. He's got 6 minutes on his clock. He takes his time. He stretches a little bit. Ale, is he going to make the move rook g4?
I am just shocked at the move rook takes d5. The more I think about it, because it's so scary, right? So easy to miss something. And you didn't need to take this pawn immediately. Just shut the rooks out of the game, play the move bishop e5, you know that you're worse, but that you're fighting for survival, and it's still a position that could be held, right? There are so many things could happen in this position. The king on h1, it's not super safe. The rooks don't have an obvious entry square. The move rook takes d5 saying, hey, why don't you rooks just, penetrate my position? Go to e8, go to e7. Even if that doesn't win, it looks bad. Why would you allow this? And rook g4, the fact that it wins immediately, it's even bigger shot. Rook g4 played. Wesley does not miss this.
He does not miss this kind of stuff. Wesley shakes his head a little bit, calculating the lines. h5. I have a feeling that maybe Magnus possibly also missed rook d8 and queen f7 this move. I don't know what he missed. We've been seeing these kind of mistakes. Immediately plays the move queen to c1.
Yeah, no, the checks first, right? Rook e8, rook e7, and then queen c1, as we talked about. And it's done.
It is over.
This is shocking to me. Rook takes d5 is a crazy move.
And bishop e5 just looked so natural, consolidating the position there. But for now, this is what it is. Magnus Carlsen trying to find a way out, but it's too late. And that's it. He resigns. And you see Wesley with his fist there. Just what a comeback by Wesley. What a brilliant game. Absolutely amazing.
Basically, I never seen Wesley so emotional. I mean, this really shows that how much it means to him, this victory. I mean, bouncing back against the champion. I mean, amazing stuff from Wesley. And I can't wait for tomorrow's match, because this is going to be a crazy match.
What a terrible feeling this. So you play rook takes d5 and you just get mated almost immediately, right? It's the kind of blunders that you don't usually see Magnus Carlsen make. Yes, he makes mistakes and this kind of things, but trapping a piece only a couple of days ago, basically getting himself mated after rook takes d5, it's not the usual way that Magnus loses games. He loses almost never, and definitely not in this fashion.
But Ali, we've been seeing that yesterday as well in his semi-final. I mean, you don't expect Magnus to make the move b4 in the fourth game as well, just the way he lost it just so quickly, blundering away. We've seen some very uncharacteristic play by Magnus. I have to say, though, that usually after these kind of misses, he looks very, very furious with himself. He looked a lot more composed there. One had the feeling that he did feel he was under a lot of pressure. Peter, maybe let's just go back to that moment where this rook d5 move happened, an absolutely shocker of a move. We were talking about it. We couldn't really figure out what was going on after rook g4, and then we saw it on the board, and we saw the engine bar go completely crazy. Take us through what happened from here on.
Yeah, well, I would like to start with the fact that, the game actually proved us right, what we were talking with Alejandro from the very beginning, when black captured with g takes f6. Let me just go back to that moment immediately, because that was the moment when we felt like whenever white knight gets to f5, it's going to be game over slowly. And how the game actually evolved after that actually indicated that Magnus also had this feeling that, this knight on f5 has such a devastating effect. So he tried all his moves with the c5, d5, bishop e5 was in order to try to create some counterplay based on this bishop d4, and immediately he also used the fact that, okay, let me sacrifice the exchange because the knight is so powerful, and he did it. All right, I believe his big problem was that he probably felt like, he only can justify the exchange sacrifice if he can grab another pawn. And definitely has missed rook g4, which just wins the game on the spot. Otherwise, clearly understanding that, okay, probably it was not exactly the plan, but just retreat the bishop to e5, and it's bad, but it's not easy for white to break through. I mean, definitely black will be able to put up quite a lot of resistance here. I mean, I agree with Alejandro that it's a kind of a shocking moment, that also with the speed how Magnus captured on d5. I mean, basically, if you play a move like rook takes d5, it has to be played after you made sure that every single possible you have covered and you came to the conclusion that it holds. It was more like an emotional decision, like rook d5, this rook e8 check, the direct check, seemed not to be winning for white on the spot. And if in fact black survives, then one can see that we were also not exactly sure how to evaluate the position. But then calm down, because it cannot be that the position is so good and then definitely Magnus would have spotted rook g4 immediately, because rook g4 just such a brutal and such an unpleasant move, because all kinds of checkmates are coming and the rook is trapped. I mean, yeah, fantastic victory for Wesley, but of course Magnus will be very upset with everything that happened. I mean, this G takes F6, this whole stuff, he was missing too many things in this game.
Just an amazing comeback by Wesley, but not just this moment. I have to say he found his way to keep the pressure going in an opening, which he really, having that E5 knight and going for this. And we're going to be having the players join us shortly in our Oslo studio. Meanwhile, Peter, let's jump to the other game and we'll connect with them as soon as they're ready with the interview.
Another endgame here. Taimur trying to prove that this is very unpleasant for Black.
Yeah, actually it does look very unpleasant because Black is threatening somewhere just with a simple rook b7 targeting the b5 pawn also.
All right, Peter, we are going to go straight to the Oslo studio. We've got the interview with us.
All right.
By not taking on d5, but it was difficult. Anyway, I'm fairly happy with the draw today. So I'll just try and push a little bit harder tomorrow.
There was one move in that last game that I noted. I think it was the 22nd move. And David Howell, our expert, said, no way will Magnus Carlsen move his pawn here to take the white pawn. No chess player would ever do that. And then you did, Magnus. Why did you make that move? Opening up for the king there.
Which one? Oh, I just thought rook f6, e4 was very, very bad. So I thought with gf6 at least keep some stability. No, I mean I just I miscalculated something before. That was the problem.
But with the way this game ended, then do you sort of regret going into that very quick draw in your last white game?
No, I was knackered, so I needed needed a short game.
And okay, so the second game was a crazy game. What did you think of that opening that Wesley So made there?
I was kicking myself a little bit for allowing it because I was checking this stuff during Vachier-Lagrave, but not today for some reason. For whatever reason, I thought he would go for the quiet line. So yeah, that was really kind of stupid.
Magnus, were you aware that actually the position for 21 moves, it did follow Wesley So's chessable course?
Oh.
No, if I'd been aware of that, I wouldn't have played it.
Will you be tempted to watch some of it tonight, maybe?
Maybe I'll make others do it.
Well, Magnus, final day of the final tomorrow. You've had super good first days in the knockout stage. Now you're tied. Does that mean we'll see a very aggressive Magnus Carlsen on the second day?
I'll certainly be more aggressive with white, that's for sure.
And Magnus, we've had a lot of fun in the studio today because we've seen a few videos where you pick out your fantasy chess teams, what chess players you would have on your fantasy team. And Wesley So almost made it. And with his play, maybe especially in the second game today, would you maybe take him back in?
I don't know.
Yeah. I also have a question. So we've been asking our viewers which famous athlete would be the best chess player. So which one of the celebrities that you've played has been surprisingly good?
I don't know. Nobody else has blown me away after that.
All right, Magnus, we're excited about tomorrow. Hope you are as well. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, and we are also joined by Wesley So, the winner of the last game today, tying the final match. Wesley, you must be feeling very happy right now.
Yeah, hi, Kaya. Yeah, I'm very thrilled, obviously, to win on demand with the white pieces. I mean, white pieces much easier than black, but still it's a very difficult thing to do also. So I'm very pleased because I was able to put pressure with the white pieces. And actually, we were following also this line, this also from my chessable course in the last game.
Yes, we were so excited to see that you brought your opening preparations and stuff that you have done in those chessable videos. Now, didn't you think that Magnus maybe would have looked at that?
No, I don't think so, because I guess my chessable course is mostly geared towards lower rated players, because there's a large public out there. I don't expect world champions to be looking at my chessable courses. And it seems like Magnus hasn't, but maybe now he will. So also in the very first game of this tournament, the preliminaries, I also played my chessable course opening against him, and also won the games against Tamor. It was all from my chessable. So it seems they're not aware, so I better take advantage, because it could get outdated quickly.
All right, Wesley. Well, it's been a very exciting day of chess. I mean, especially that second game was amazing. But how disappointed were you after that crazy opening to make a blunder then, I guess?
Yeah, that was really unfortunate. Really bad, because apparently I haven't analyzed queen takes d4, move 21, because obviously the engine gives c takes b5 as the only move, and then it's 0.00. But the thing is, you only check what the engine gives, and so queen takes d4 is actually losing by force, but at the same time I didn't know how to react. And during the game I was confused as to what was happening. I thought I mixed up already some move order, because this opening is highly complicated. I mean, white is not better, but it's just very unclear. And on move 18, queen c3 is actually very important, because c5 is inaccurate because of bishop c7. So there are some move order subtleties which could be quite tricky. So I wasn't sure exactly. I knew this was my analysis, but I couldn't remember anything after queen takes d4. And so I was hesitating whether I'm still following my opening or whether I'm already mixed up something. But it's unfortunate, because bishop c4 on move 22 should probably just win the game. Black has a piece in return for 2 pawns, but his problem is his minor pieces are very badly placed, and all his pieces are in bad positions, and the knight is pinned. So it's a waste of good opening material. But it happens.
Well, and Wesley, after this loss, you played a draw, but it was a must-win situation for you then in that last game. And what sort of mental exercises or how did you get yourself ready for that game, coming back so strong with that win you really needed?
Well, I just play my chessable course.
Did you?
In the last game I also played the chessable course. I had it analyzed until move 20. Actually, I just checked after the game. On the course, I recommended rook ab1 instead of c4. But c4 looks very testing also, because black only has one way to equalize, which is not so easy to find.
And
so
Wesley.
So I felt. Sorry,
carry on.
So I felt like I should just stick to my course, because as Botvinnik said, if you can recommend something, you should have the courage to play it. But didn't expect this to work that well.
And if some of the viewers are tempted to go and buy your chessable course after seeing such success against the world champion, what would you say to them? What should they expect from that course?
Well, first thing for porting, well, you can try it. I mean, you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's a good thing about chessable.
Very good, yeah.
You can always try it, and if it's crap, you can return it. But but I spent almost a month or two working on this course, so the lines are very well researched, and also my course called Lifetime Repertoire, so I try to make the lines very stable, and with a few updates, it could very well last an entire lifetime. But I'm happy that it worked so far in this tournament. But at the same time, to those viewers who are just learning chess, well, openings are just one thing. I mean, it's good to have a stable opening repertoire for both colors, but at the same time, you also need to be good at other things, such as the middle game or tactics.
Well, Wesley, then, on day 2, you are tied in the match. Should we expect you to keep bringing this opening, or will you have something other in store for us?
It depends if Magnus is going to go skiing or if he's going to look at my chessable course.
Very good. Well, Wesley, we're so excited for tomorrow. Hope you are as well. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks. hopefully I can put up a good fight tomorrow.
Good luck, Wesley. Thanks for joining us. Wesley, so he is tied.
Freedom! So fresh, so new. Freedom! It's all for you. All for you. Freedom! Keep your ear to the ground. Talking about freedom! It's the best show in town. Best show in town. Freedom!
Welcome back. That was an amazing interview by both these players, and surprisingly, Magnus also looked like he was in good spirits. Wesley, of course, extremely happy with the way things went. Some great insights there by our players, but for now, we do have more chess action. Let's jump straight into this. We'll talk about that more later. Peter, Ale, what's the update on this endgame?
It's crazy that the players have arrived to this position with the amount of time they have. It's move 30, guys. It does seem like MVL is suffering a little bit. You can see him in the back foot with the rooks on c7 and c8. But man, his position is solid. It's going to be up to Tamer to prove some kind of way of improving his position so that his own rooks don't look awkward. Because, well, guess what? This rook's in the 6th rank. All they're really doing is attacking the c6 pawn. How do I get them in the game? He tries to move king d4, and a lot of these moves, they just don't do very much. They just pass the move, say black can't do anything. I might as well improve my position very slightly. Of course, black won't even dream of the move c5 check, because that would actually justify the rooks being on the 6th rank. He might want to pass, but the problem with having less space is, how do you pass?
I just want to point out that after c5, the one move that you don't want to make is king to d5. Let's just have that on the board, because whenever you have a checkmate, we got to show it. Bishop e6 would be game over, mating the king on this in the center of the board. But like Ale, you were pointing out, just simply fall back with the king, and then suddenly you see a big weakness on d6, and that's the point of provoking c5. I take your point of c5, b5 hangs, d6 hangs, but can black get very adventurous and say, you know what, I am desperate for counterplay, and try and break with g5? It looks like a pawn sacrifice, but it also destroys white's pawn structure regardless of the pawn that you decide to capture.
Sorry, Spania, g5 here.
I don't know. Does it work? Does it not work?
No, I mean, it's a very interesting idea. I mean, it's a stunning move, because, yeah, destroying the structure and then actually claim that the bishop on d7 is protecting the c6 pawn. And Alejandro already very nicely pointed out that the rooks on b6 and on a6 are targeting the c6 pawn, but otherwise they are not doing anything. And look at this, yeah, Maxim doesn't go g5, but he's basically doing this fe4, bishop e4, king f6, probably getting ready to push g5 anyway, breaking white's structure. The big question is, can white keep the control of the position? But it looks like black might be in time to go g5.
I like this as well. You know, the whole point is that he has the rook on b6, rook on a6, bishop on e4, really pretty pieces, eyeing that c6 pawn. And I see the evaluation bar also really likes white's position and says white is better here. But then on the other hand, that rook b6, rook a6 are also kind of stuck there for a while. They don't have a way to come to the king side so easily, and that's why the g5 break is so attractive. And finally, Maxime, after the move bishop f3, goes for it.
I think it's a great timing, because fg, hg, sometimes you would like to get both the moves h5 and g4 in, but guess what? Black's in time to play his own g4, and the h5 pawn now looks quite silly. Material's very reduced, and with the only real weakness on black's position being the c6 pawn, I'm wondering if it's going to be enough for Tamer to even cause real problems.
Yeah, I also feel like the moment of really posing problems for Maxim has passed. I mean, Radjabov somewhere lost the control. Maybe it wasn't as bad as Engine was saying, because if we just go back quickly, I think that the game is slowing down now. We have the time. I mean, it did look very nice for Radjabov that he got out of the opening, because he is the one who is getting the A file. Takes, rook a7. Here it looked like maybe black's position is about to fall apart, because rook b7 hitting the b5 pawn and the rook was coming to a1. Let's see how did Maxim manage to keep things under control. King e7, rook a1 after rook b7. He's in time to play the move bishop c6. Yeah, sorry, I already prepared it before the the break, but yeah, it was rook b7, bishop c6. So white goes rook a1, rook d8. Again, still keeping an eye on bishop c6 if the rook gets to b7. Rook a6, taking away the c6 square. Now black goes c6. White plays king d2. Looking back now, yeah, but if rook b7, then black will start harassing white's rook. Yeah, that was the idea. So Radjabov opted for king d2. The plan of bringing his king to the center looks very, very natural. I mean, looks like a dream, but finally, anyway, Maxim managed to set up some very nice fortification. And then also played the move f5, which we liked a lot with Alejandro. So let's see what's in store for us in the game. No, he played rook a1. That was the update. And rook e8, rook f1 played, king g7.
They're still playing so quickly. It's crazy. I mean, I start thinking there's a rook on e8, my king on d4 suddenly doesn't feel as safe as it used to when it always had the e3 retreat. It's like they calculate without any problems that there won't be any checkmate patterns. I would be a little bit scared that rook e5, bishop f5 indeed comes.
He plays bishop e4, so you don't have bishop f5 anymore. So that move makes a lot of sense. But I also want to ask you that if white would have actually captured on g5, was black then planning to go king g6 to capture the pawn, or were there real dangers with c5 check?
Yeah, I would assume that rook e5 was kind of the plan, yeah, because it's very much in the spirit of, you know, you are setting rook take g5, and also the white king on d4 is feeling very, very unhappy. On the other hand, bishop f5 is still not possible because the pawn on c6 is hanging, and whenever you play c5 check, the white king retreats. However, the human brain is like this, that you see the danger much earlier and you already try to stop all these things ever happening to you. Of course, maybe an engine, for example, would just take on g5 and say that, okay, what? I mean, I don't care about rook e5 because those mating threats are not even real. But for us, it does mean a lot. And in this regard, I understand the Radjabov's move, like, you know, bishop e4, just trying to make sure that this king will be able to get back safely. Bishop e4.
All right, so now the question is for black, because now actually white can take on g5 and go g6 with that pawn. So maybe it's a real threat. Also, a move like h5 comes to mind, but then you've got this g4 idea. I would be scared of the fact that white can grab on g5 and put a pawn on g6. So does black actually trade on h4 now and maybe go rook h8?
Yeah, you're a little bit frightened sometimes of something like rook g1, rook g6, but again, perhaps it's nothing. Because if you go to f7, I do have the move h5, like for example, rook h8, rook g1, king f7, nice. H5 starts looking unpleasant, right?
That's
and
nice.
I don't have that many squares for my king because, as I said, king f6, rook g6 looks a little bit scary, but perhaps it's still nothing there.
Yeah, Maxim goes for rook e5.
Here I was a little bit concerned about h5 with the possibility of maybe playing h6, rook f7 in some position.
So h5, can he go g4 so that h6, king h6? Oh, you want to go rook f7? I thought rook h1.
Rook f7 or rook f6, depending on the position, right? Because e5 will be hanging in many variations.
Let's see that line, Peter, on the board. So g4 is met by h6. And the point is that if you grab the pawn, you've got rook f6, which looks very strong. Rook f6, rook d6 looks killing, actually.
Yeah, and it's on the board. h5 played. I mean, now that Radjabov got his bishop to e4, I mean, it's very tempting to try to create all these ideas against black's king. I'm also wondering that what Maxim has in store. I mean, he definitely sees some dynamic ideas, because otherwise h6 check followed by rook f6 looks devastating. Does he just fall back with the rook to e6? Is that a move? But I'm not liking it.
Yeah, because you always have to be worried again of this move g4, cementing this pawn. Perhaps you have this pressure on g4, which is quite enough to hold the balance, but it starts looking awkward for the black side. He has some immediate problems to solve.
Yeah, how does he intend to do that? Yeah, finally also we see that Maxim slowed down a bit, because he was just playing so quickly, but now he's done on the clock for the first time in the game.
H6 is such a simple question, but I haven't found like a nice answer. There are many answers. It's like bishop e8 could be an answer. You mentioned rook e6 is an answer, but this ideas of g4, I'm still a little bit frightened. I would rather not have to allow this kind of positions. Perhaps it's nothing though.
After g4, do you try and go rook f6?
Taking advantage of the fact that this rook on b6 is just so far away from the action, but I mean, you take, you go h6. I don't know. I'm a little bit scared of allowing this pawn all the way to h7. I would have to start really calculating that you're not queening by force.
Oh, yeah, but it's very scary. You're absolutely right. And h5, like you mentioned, h6 is such a direct threat with no clear way to answer it. Peter, the other move that you were mentioning here was bishop to e8. How does that help after h6?
Well, we don't know exactly how it helps. Yeah, it's just one of these ideas that you feel like you connect maybe your rooks. But
I know, but I can't do this because rook h1.
Rook h1, rook h7 actually.
Rook h1, king g7, rook h7, yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, something to think about. I mean, it's also nice seeing that finally Maxim taking his time because, you know, whenever we see him blitzing all these moves out, it feels like, wow, I mean, he seems to have all the answers to all the questions, but finally he is also concerned of something.
I don't know how nice that is, Peter, because usually when Maxim slows down, it's when he's already in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I felt like, you know, for us, it's kind of nice that because we always tell him that, or we are keep telling in our broadcast that, yeah, please take your time, make sure that you know what you are doing. But Maxim keeps on believing in his strategy, and he's in he was in the semifinals and he's fighting for the third place. So definitely, I mean, his strategy works, but still it looks so scary.
I mean, playing c5, diamond hands, right? d6 is hanging, h6 an issue, this rook on b6 is suddenly alive. What is he intending?
Yeah, and also look at the engine bar. I mean, engine bar is not that skeptical from black side. I mean, this is completely crazy because it looks like almost game over.
I mean, when you make a move like c5, you've got to have an immediate follow-up because otherwise the d6 pawn is just hanging. So what is the move? It has to be some very direct idea here for black.
Rook e6, he wants
and the engine
this
bar hates it.
The engine bar hates what he did, and I'm not surprised. There was so much pressure on his position.
But yeah, he wants to somewhere use this d5 trick, but it never really works, yeah, because white can anyway take. But
so what is white's move here? Is bishop d5 something that black needs to worry about? Because what is the square for the rook after that?
Yeah, it's a very natural.
Good question, right?
But maybe there's rook f6 actually. Because rook f6, king f6, rook d6, there's this king e5 idea.
But even those h6 ideas are there, yeah? Very scary.
And rook 8, you can't take it with the king because the rook hangs, and after rook 8-6, rook f7, and then suddenly there are back rank issues as well.
No, that just looks completely winning. But if you don't have rook f6, where do you put your rook? And you're just losing the d6 pawn, right? And the d6 pawn is what's keeping black's position alive. It keeps the rook on b6 at bay. I don't see a defense to bishop d5.
Okay, so rook 8-6 runs into rook f7, rook f6 runs into 8-6, and we're getting some information from Sachdev that the correct move instead of rook e6, according to the engine, was bishop to h3. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, those little engine moves. I mean, that's why chess, you know, on the online when you are facing some bots, then you just cannot play because in any position engine will come up with a move. Yeah, it's just impossible. But I mean, humanly speaking, you have committed the move c5, but yeah, it just showed that you know, we were kind of struggling here after h5, and maybe also Maxim played all these c5 rook e6 moves out of desperation. It was not like he was happy or he knew what he's doing. He just didn't see another move.
You know, even after bishop h3 has been pointed out, I still don't understand that move because you leave the defense of the b5 pawn. I get it that you're attacking the rook on f1, but you still have this d6 weakness, this b5 weakness. What happens when white sidesteps with the rook? Rook to h1 comes to mind, rook to f2 comes to mind, and that's the point. Thank you for pointing out, Peter.
Yeah, well, thanks to Sotiris, because Sotiris consults the engine and he immediately mentioned that, you know, guys, don't worry. Yeah, the whole point of Bishop H3 tempo is, yeah, that black does win a tempo, hitting the rook, and then you connect your rooks, and all of a sudden black gets serious counter chances. That's how the computer brain works, but we see that, I mean, even Maxim, despite being so creative, I mean, he didn't manage to spot this Bishop H3 key move.
Oh, it's a crazy move. The bishop goes out of the way just for the tempo. And even those positions, H6, rook takes D6, coming with a counter tempo for white in so many positions, look so scary. You could do it immediately. You could do it the move after you play rook F2. Yes, maybe it holds all very nicely, but there's a lot to calculate here that's not so easy. There's a G6 square that's weak. There's a lot of discover attacks that you have to do. If you have to run forward, look, it's not an easy decision to make, right?
Definitely, yeah. I'm only assuming King H5 because of engine. Yeah, it's an engine line. So probably he believes that he can run, but...
We play on the spirit of the engine.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody would consult an engine from the white side, you would, during a game, would feel that, okay, there is no way it's not checkmate, right? I mean, okay, this black king is looking terrible there, but apparently it's working. But rook e6 played, and Radjabov seems to have this very big opportunity of going bishop d5. I mean, for the moment, we are not seeing any kind of defense after that.
And look at the engine. It absolutely hates black's position now after seeing rook e6. And I'm wondering if bishop d5, we were looking at this move and very difficult to find a square for black's rook. But is that the right way to go, or is there something even stronger than that?
For now, it looks strong enough unless you find a defense. But the problem is rook f6, h6, as was pointed out, is just so monstrously strong, right?
Time, Peter. And after rook h6, rook f7, you can't go back to g8 because then you go rook d7 and king h8, there's rook b8, you trade the rooks and go rook f8 and pick up the bishop.
That's just game over.
Wow. All right, and what happens if after bishop d5, you keep the rook on the e file? Does white simply go rook d6? Is that the point? Or do you still have h6 ideas? Let's say rook e5 here or rook e7.
I think at that point, I just have a choice, right? Of how do I want to win?
Yeah, bishop d5 on the board. Yeah,
on the board, rook e7 blitzed out, Peter, because rook f7 was such a big threat.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, this is basically capitulation. I mean, this rook e7 also with the speed how, and look at this Maxim leaning back. He knows that's it. It's finished. He gonna resign soon and he gonna lose this, which means that Radjabov will take set 1. I mean, it's basically almost impossible to imagine any other scenario.
Maxim does look like a lost soul right now.
It all turned so quickly, right? He was holding this position down quite nicely, and at some point he allows this move h5. I don't know if it was necessary. He could have taken on h4 at some point to eliminate a couple pawns, and he found himself in a position where he just couldn't solve it. And he backed himself into a corner. He needed to solve this bishop h3 engine-like idea, and just getting to a position where you need to do this is very dangerous. He wasn't able to do it in a rapid game. Sometimes you were not even able to solve this in a classical game.
And now bishop h3, but too little and too late. We see him with the rook on e7. It was the other rook that was supposed to come to e7 with that bishop h3 move. Now it's all over. Maxim decides to throw in the towel and resigns because there are big threats with bishop g8. The black king was in a mating net. Peter, how does this finish after rook d8? Is bishop g8, bishop e4 the ideal?
Yeah, probably simply any kind of check wins the game. Yeah, with bishop e4, with bishop g8. Okay, black would love to give one more check with bishop f1, but then white actually just captures this bishop. I mean, that's the problem. You even don't have bishop f1, you don't have bishop f5 checks. The rooks are completely useless on the 7th because the action is on the 8th rank, and the other rook on the 6th rank also controls everything. It's just a position where you really have to design because you're not going to find the move even if you think for 1 week.
What an incredible game by actually both these players throughout this match. All 3 decisive games that we saw, just extreme high quality. We saw how Raja played in this game, putting pressure on that c6 pawn and then shifting play to the king side. Once Maxim broke in with g5, it looked like there were chances. But Radjabov transferred his rook just at the right time, and with that, He takes the lead in their match for the fight for the third place, which means Maxime has to win tomorrow to take it to the playoff. Meanwhile, the main match between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So ended dramatically as well. Magnus Carlsen won the second game, taking the lead, and then Wesley made a comeback in the final game. Ale, what an incredible, entertaining day of chess we've had. Your thoughts on how this final has started?
Just back and forth, right? Wesley with his preparation saying, look, I got this course. I know my prep is out there, but I believe in it. It's strong. And when it came down to the key move where he could have taken a huge advantage, just a bad memory, bad understanding. You don't know what happened there. He couldn't remember. And Magnus punishes him heavily, takes that second game. But guess what? He just makes a quick draw with the black pieces and is able to bounce back. A very nice game in which we expected the world champion to put a lot more resistance, installing this bishop on e5, but it wasn't to be. And Wesley takes down game 4, setting us up for an amazing final day of chess tomorrow. But kudos to Radjabov. I mean, he plays this kind of positions excellently, where he doesn't have any risk, but he keeps pressing, he keeps pressing, and he keeps pressing. And at some point, he kind of collapsed. And this is what happens to MVL. He just wasn't able to withstand the pressure. He's not a player that's known to do this, right? It's not like a Wesley So where he just sits back behind a barricade and is able to hold the draw. He's a very aggressive, very dynamic player. And he wasn't able to solve the dynamics of the position when it came to be. He was being under pressure for so long. And Radjabov takes the first day in what's also been an incredible day of chess for them.
I couldn't agree more. And Wesley So equalizes the score in that critical, very critical game 4. Now, I have to say in the Skilling Open, it was Wesley who beat Magnus and won the event. Today, we saw him come back in this game 4, take it to the second set with a tied score. I think the pressure is on the world champion. In the first Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour of 2020, we saw Magnus win 4 out of the 5 events. So far in this tour, he hasn't won an event. The Skilling Open, he lost in the finals. In the Air Things Masters, he was knocked out in the quarterfinals. He's mentioned it himself that winning this event would be some kind of a redemption to the way things have gone the last few months. Peter, big questions for the world champion tomorrow. Your take on what he needs to do?
Well, I don't know exactly what he needs to do. I mean, one thing is for sure, his team has to study Wesley's course because, I mean, I understand that Magnus doesn't have the time to do that. Yeah, it's clear. But I mean, his team has to make sure that, you know, Wesley has also shown his intentions, you know, that I have written this course. I basically used it as a preparation for the chess tour. I mean, for the Champions Chess Tour. So I'm ready for it. We even heard that in the break he made sure that he checks it because he knew that he has written every important line into the course. And in this regard, I do feel that justice was served when Wesley managed to win the 4th game and tie the match, because it would have been really heartbroken, the feeling if, you know, Magnus fell into Wesley's preparation in the 2nd game, but there Wesley suddenly didn't recall the big point of bishop c4 and then went on losing that game. I feel like, you know, that 2-2 happened, justice was served. I also believe that, you know, now Magnus definitely will regret game 3, that with the white pieces he prematurely forced the draw, because those kind of match strategies are, if they work, it's a wonderful strategy, and everybody will say that, of course, Magnus perfectly judged that in this situation it was the best choice. Now that it backfired, I mean, it's clearly it's going to be also on his mind, and he will be heavily criticized for that why do you do this? I'm sure that Magnus will have to be in a very big fighting mood tomorrow, because we have seen Wesley showing his fist. I mean, we have seen how much it meant for Wesley that he managed to bounce back against Magnus, and we have seen this throughout the tour, that whenever Wesley starts to believe that he's capable of doing, then he's capable of doing anything. And in this regard, I'm just looking forward to a brilliant match tomorrow. I don't know what to say. I mean, Magnus and his team, make sure you have Wesley's scores under control, because otherwise you might end up in big trouble again.
In fact, Kaya did ask Magnus about that 3rd round quick draw that he took with the white pieces, and asked him whether he regretted that decision with the way things have turned out in this set one. And he just said no. I think he was very clear that he needed a break. He's just completely knackered is what he said. And I think it's so easy to forget the 7-day journey that the players have had to reach this stage. 15 rounds in the preliminaries, quarterfinals, semifinals, no rest day in the middle is just such a difficult and a demanding format. Ale, how big a role is stamina going to play tomorrow?
Oh, stamina is huge. We know that both of these players prepare physically strongly because it's part of being a chess professional. Honestly, I'm still very impressed by both of you. You see so much during all of these games and you've been doing commentary for all of them. I know that when I do commentary, I'm exhausted at the end of the day. And you guys have been going day after day, so many games of chess to be analyzed, and you're still oh so sharp, providing great commentary. Thanks, guys, for keeping these days entertaining. And I'm looking forward to seeing both of you tomorrow.
Ale, you're very modest. I've worked with you in St. Louis. You've got so much energy and you yourself are an absolute inspiration to all the commentators out there. Thank you so much for joining us and all your brilliant insights today. It was an absolute pleasure to have you with us.
No, thank you so much, Tanya. Pleasure to be here with both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alejandro, it was very, very nice. Well, also the games were just brilliant. It was a lot of excitement. Yeah, I mean, this whole match between Wesley So and Magnus Carlsen with all these very sharp Italians, I think it was just a very big delight for everybody who likes, openings and new ideas, and Wesley's coming up with new ideas. I wonder, how much surprise he still has in his store, because after all, you don't really get a chance to surprise Magnus Carlsen so often in the openings.
And Peter, after spectacular and 8 spectacular days of chess, it all comes down to tomorrow. We will have the winner of the Opera Euro Rapid tomorrow as we go into the final set of the finals. It is Judgment Day for Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. Will Magnus Carlsen finally win an event after a rough couple of months, or will Wesley So do what few have done, beat Magnus in a final twice in a period of 3 months, 4 months in a match? Definitely Wesley is super motivated, looking for his second title in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. Magnus Carlsen, I'm sure motivation is not a problem for him. He's been talking about looking for that redemption. It all comes down to tomorrow. A big shout out to everyone who's joined us for our broadcast on Twitch, on YouTube, on Chess24. Thank you so much for being a part of this and hanging out with us. And of course, none of this would be possible without our partners, Meltwater, Airthings, and Opera. Airthings are the one who are taking care of all the air quality for our players and reminding them when they need to get some fresh air, open the window. And I think for now, with all the chess that we've seen, not just the players, all of us need some fresh air, Peter. I think we're going to call it a night. And just a reminder, if you've enjoyed all the action as much as we've enjoyed it, bringing it to you, do consider going premium. There's a 40% off on membership currently. So go to Chess24. You do support the tour that way, as well as everything that we do. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for the final day of the Opera Euro Rapid. Good night.
Freedom, so fresh, so new. Freedom, it's all for you. All for you. Freedom, keep your ear to the ground. Talking about the freedom, it's the best show in town. Best show in town. Freedom, well, well.